Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It's going to be a fantastic show here tonight. We have Suzy Hansen, UFO contact or UFO researcher, contactee, also investigator. We're going to be talking for hours 1 and 2. She's joining us all the way from New Zealand. Should be an awesome conversation. Hours 1 and 2, and then hour 3, Steve Stockton tells untold missing person mysteries, UFO weird news, and among some other things. Let's go ahead and jump out and see who has come on in here first. Courtesy of Race Fan, it looks like we got Woo Riders DG coming in with the gold tonight. That's very rare, Woo Riders. Definitely glad to see you in early. We got Race Fan with the silver, and then the Roswell Alien with that bronze. Appreciate you guys coming on in bright and early, getting those medal positions. You know how it goes around here. Let's see who else has come on in here tonight. We have Kitty Cattywhack, who is always awesome as well, coming in early and make sure that we know what's going on, and we do appreciate that. And also, she, let's see, passing a gold medal to acknowledge another. She went to next 3. She's first posted in SOR and the Social Dig as well, which is my personal channel. Thank you for doing that, Kitty Cattywhack. You're awesome all the way around. Thanks for your support and your love. Who else has come on in here? We have Werewolf69 saying hi from Canada, from Canada. Appreciate you coming on in, Werewolf69. We have Amy WC sitting saying, I'm here setting up the buffet table. Okay. Well, appreciate you. We're going to go ahead and get things together for you in just a moment here. We have also Miss Catherine Jones saying, hello, Mr. Rob G. Hello, Miss Catherine Jones. Thank you so much for coming on in and joining us on the show here tonight. Cosmic Joe Chronicles. Hey there, Rob G. Appreciate you coming on in, Cosmic Joe. Awesome stuff, sir. Who else is here tonight? We have Michael Dyer. Hey, Michael Dyer. Thanks for coming in, saying hey now, right back to you. Undead Jed, because we want retribution. That's daggone right. Appreciate you coming on in, Undead Jed. Also, Jerry Carter, thanks for showing up here tonight. We have Bad Frankie B. Not to be confused with Good Frankie B. Or are you good and bad, Frankie B? Saying good evening. Thank you for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up. We got Walter Kokubinski saying, hey, Rob G and SORs. Thank you for coming in. Walter Kokubinski, we are about to get ready here. We have about, I think, 30 seconds before we go. We got Signs of Life. Good evening. Thank you for coming on in. Stargazer, thanks for showing up. Mike Jones, Mike Jones, thank you for coming on in. We have FAP coming in saying evening SOR. Right back to you, FAP. Thanks for showing up tonight. We have, let's see, can we get to everyone? I think we can. Yeah, Mel WD40, obviously getting us ready and lubed up for the show. Appreciate you coming on in, Mel WD40. And we'll have latecomers as well that we'll kind of point the finger at on the next break, right? Tardy for the party, guys. Let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You've just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. And tonight, we're broadcasting on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives absolutely free. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. While you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio, and that's Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and so much more. We're gonna have a fantastic show here tonight. We have alien contactee, UFO researcher joining us all the way from New Zealand. Suzy Hansen is a former school teacher and grief counselor, author, UFO sighting researcher, investigator, contact experiencer, and public speaker. We've had her on the show before, and we are gracious to have her back here today as we bring her on the stage. Suzy Hansen, hi, how are you?
Hi, Rob. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Glad everything is going well for you and you're feeling great. We sent healing energies to you last year as you were going through a couple tough things. And we're just going to see you here looking nice and healthy for us tonight. So that's that. And, we were talking briefly before the show about age of disclosure, which I think we'll get into that a little bit later. But I did kind of want to reintroduce everyone because we also talked about how, it appears that ufology is taking the main stage, and it's something that we briefly talked about. And, you have a lot of people out there that may have told their story 1, 2, 10, 20 times, but it's worth doing it again because we have a whole new group of listeners, a lot of people coming in interested and intrigued about the potential of extraterrestrials being here, for one, and thanks also to Avi Loeb with the 3-Eye Atlas talk, because I think he opened up a lot more eyes by doing that as well. So now that we're on this bigger stage, this global stage, what got you into this field? Did you have any early experiences? Let's go ahead and start there.
Okay, yeah, I had an early experience at age 8. My family and I were just having an ordinary Friday night, and my father came running in from outside and said, get out on the concrete terrace and look out over the Bombay Hills, which were about 20 kilometres away from where we were. So we all ran out there and had a look in the mid-60s, and sure enough, there's this long orange bar like a ruler hanging in the sky, slightly flaring, slightly pulsing. And of course, there was no logical explanation for it. It wasn't an aircraft or a helicopter or a natural occurrence. So we notified the neighbours, who came out onto their terraces, and everybody was watching and exchanging thoughts over the fence. And I guess that really opened up my interest in what might be out there, because my parents, I could hear them saying it's a UFO, it's a flying saucer, and I was just absolutely fascinated by it and couldn't sleep that night because it posed so many questions in my little mind. And really, that was the jumping point. From then on, I just became interested in anything to do with space. Not that I'm any kind of expert, but it's always fascinated me. And didn't really experience much else apart from contact memories, but no more UFO sightings till I was 20. So there was quite a long gap there. But during that time, I think I was formulating a lot of opinions about a lot of things.
And so having a sighting like that obviously has to change, your perspective. I would think instantly. Did you have a shift instantly into the realization that there was more than us? Like, what kind of take us through that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my mother was saying, well, someone must be flying it, and I was trying to imagine who that someone might be. Wasn't much around in those days in terms of sci-fi, so it was left up to your imagination. But to me, it was a phenomenal experience. And I think two things that occurred after that, which were quite striking, was I had this real upswing in my academic achievements. I'll put it that way. My interest in things at school, my participation. And also, I began to experience a lot of psychic things. So whether there's a link there, I don't know. But in later years, you start remembering your contact experiences, and you can see that there's probably a link there, definitely, to some of the things that happened to me around about the same age. So yeah, it was fantastic. From that point on, I used to go and borrow my next door neighbour's encyclopedias and read the old information we had about space and the solar system, etc. So it certainly sparked something in me. It had different reactions with the rest of my family. Like my father was fascinated by it. My mother was, but could take it or leave it. My sister disappeared inside because it wasn't that interesting to watch. But it floated off down south, down the island, and was sighted by hundreds of people in the next region south of us, and was reported in the New Zealand Herald. So obviously it caught a lot of people's attention.
Wow, that's interesting. That should definitely be one for the record books. And speaking of books, you mentioned encyclopedias. And for younger viewers out there of a certain age, encyclopedias was the internet before the internet.
Yep, that's the one.
This is how you gain knowledge and information about the world and things, historical things that have happened. So just had to put that out there because some kids are like, encyclopedia.
Thank you, Rob. You're showing my age.
Yeah. They're doing things like Wikipedia now,
Yes.
But with that being said, so outside of that, and we're going to actually get into your book here in a moment, which is where you had your the contact in the 20s. But who would have been, because I know I've seen you talk about the fact that we have these older researchers, some of the originals out there who really kind of tried to bring this to the forefront, spent their lives basically, fighting for UFO transparency. Who would have been like one of the first original researchers that caught your attention? And kind of, if you could kind of explain that moment, I think that'd be awesome.
Okay, well, actually, it was Dr. David Jacobs, and nowadays, of course, I kind of I think a lot of the stuff he talks about is quite negative, but that's mainly because people who've had those kinds of experiences and abduction experiences in the States will go to him because that's been his area of research. So it's not said as a criticism. But in the early days, his book, Secret Life, was one of the first kinds of books, along with the John Mack book, to come out to New Zealand. We had nothing. So when I started with all of this, I felt very alone until I began to make friends and meet some people who'd experienced similar in New Zealand. We were pretty much at the end of the planet. And I guess when first time I saw his book with that beam of light and a human figure standing in it, and the words Secret Life, that had an instant emotional impact on me, and I just broke down and cried because I realized that I'd been experiencing and living and knowing this other life that I couldn't really share with anyone else. My first husband tried to impress upon me that I was completely insane by having these kinds of memories. So it was a very lonely life for a long time, and that book really brought those emotions to the fore, or the image on the front cover anyway. But I think he did a great job of categorizing those early abduction contact experiences that were taking place at that time.
Wow. Okay. And then, so you have this first sighting, in the 60s. You said about 10 years passes till you had your next event in your 20s. So leading
About
up to that,
a
yeah,
bit
go ahead.
longer than that. Yeah, I was 20 when it happened, yes.
Okay, so leading up from that first contact experience, going through that, having this new, you know, revelation that there's something going on out there. You come to the Dr. Jacobs book, and this is festering inside of you, I'm assuming, because I'm sure it was hard to talk to anybody about it, even as recently as 10 years ago, truthfully. But you know, what was the path that took you to finally saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and write a book about my experience? What it take us through those steps?
Okay, well, the funny thing is that I had a memory from childhood of being told by some unusual beings, which I didn't recognize as, ETs in those days as a child. Just someone I felt like I'd had a dream, but I was being told that I would write a book one day, and that they were actually putting a book in my head. And by that, they weren't really referring to the book that I wrote. They were referring to a process I would go through in my life of discovery, etc., writing the book and all of the other things that I do. That was what they meant by the book, and they said certain parts of it would open at the right time and I would just know what to do. So right from when I was a kid, I used to talk to my mother and say, I'm going to write a book one day. And she used to go, oh, yes, okay, and not take too much notice. But in later years, I had a memory of being on a craft and being with a small group of people and being told by the grey present, you are all going to write books about your experiences. It's really important that people know what takes place and begin to feel comfortable with it and lose the fear. So at that time, I was thinking, well, I'm an adult now, I've got kids, I'm involved in all sorts of things. When am I going to get the time to do that? But of course I did. It was in my destiny and nothing was going to stop it from happening.
That's right, and I encourage others to do the same way, because it's kind of hard to break out of that, and it's really been because of the stigma. There are people afraid to kind of, talk about their experiences. But now that we're in this new age, hopefully a lot more people get the courage to do so. So you write the book. It's and I have the title here. It's The Dual Soul Connection: The Alien Agenda for Human Advancement, and that's the book that covers your encounter in your 20s. So if you could, let's go back to that encounter and let's talk about what happened.
Okay. Well, by then I was a young teacher living in a rural region of New Zealand that's famous for its massive sheep stations. So it's very much a farming community. There's a couple of cities there and a lot of small towns, and those are small cities. So it's not an up-to-the-minute modern sort of area in those days. So my flatmate and I decided we'd go down to the south of this territory and visit friends on farms. He had friends on a farm, I had friends on a big sheep station, and family friends. So he drove me down, dropped me off. And when he picked me up at 4:30, late afternoon in autumn, so the sun's still shining, a lovely golden day, paddocks looking all beautiful with the white sheep in them, very picturesque. And he said to me, I've decided we're not going to go back via the main highway up to Hastings. We're going to go on a back road. Now, the back road was another highway really only used by farm traffic and farmers and young guys wanting to speed. And it didn't have all of the little townships. It was quite lonely at the foot of the Ruahine Ranges. And when he said that, interestingly, my stomach lurched like it had fallen out of my body and onto the ground. That was how profound it was. But anyway, I got in the car, off we went. About halfway into the journey, we saw some lights ahead above the end of a range of hills that we were beside. And there were two bright white lights side by side. We just automatically thought they were the landing lights of an agricultural aircraft going into land on a farm for the night. Didn't take too much notice. And when they disappeared, we naturally thought that the aircraft had changed direction. We could no longer see its landing lights. A few seconds passed and bang, they were right next to us over the hills adjacent to our car. At that stage, we were coming down some hills onto a long straight that went over a very wide riverbed, so about 2.5 k's long, and at the end of it, there was a one-way bridge. We hadn't reached there, we were just coming down onto the straight, and so my flatmate slowed the car right down, almost to a halt. The lights went out again. We began wondering what they were, talking about what it could be. And they came on back ahead of us again. Completely stopped the car and watched. They went out again and disappeared, didn't come back. So we thought, oh, okay, well, they haven't come back. Sat there for a minute or two, so we'll carry on. So we carried on. We're only in about second gear when he looked in a rear vision mirror and said to me, oh God, whatever it is, it's coming up behind us. So I put my head out the window and saw this massive elliptical shape of light coming up behind the car at huge speed. Within seconds, it was right over the top of us. The car was full of the most blinding light. It was painful to see. You had to keep shutting your eyes and squinting. I could hear someone screaming, and later on realized it was me. And I kind of managed to turn my head. It felt as if I was in slow motion to see what my flatmate Pete was doing. And he had dropped his hands and he had his head against the door jamb, wasn't driving the car anymore, looked like he was out to it. And this terrific graunching sound started high-pitched and then went down to a graunching sound which seemed to knock me out. I don't remember anymore. And the next thing was I was taken up onto a craft. So years and years later, decades later actually, a friend who's a researcher convinced me to have a regression on that to see what came out. And it was very interesting what came out. But it was at the time a terrifying experience until years later, and I made sense of it. And the most phenomenal thing about it was that the next memory after blacking out in the car, the next memory was having a loud clapping noise occur in my head, which kind of woke me and I could hear it reverberating. And it was pitch black. And there was a feeling of flotation, and the car hit the ground, lights came on, the one-way bridge was right in front of us, and it was now dark. We both argued and fought for about the next half hour about what had happened, why it was now dark. And my flatmate, who had a science degree and worked in science, was absolutely had convinced himself that we'd come across a fast-moving helicopter, and that was what we had seen. Nothing would shake that opinion in his head. And certainly he had no explanation for why it was now dark. So that was a strange one. When we got back to our flat, we were told, you're late. We were supposed to be there at a certain time, and 90 minutes later we arrived. Our tea had disintegrated into leather in the oven, and we could make no sense of it. I felt sick. He felt sick. Our mouths were dry, but our palms of our hands were sweating. Every time we thought of it for the next few weeks or months, we broke out in a sweat and had all the symptoms of PTSD. And later on in life, I began to make sense of it and finally found out that I'd been taken up onto a craft and I had been given some implants because 3 months beforehand, I'd had a horrific car accident with a lot of injuries. And by law, I had to start my first year of teaching or they would prosecute me. So despite my injuries, I had to start teaching and I was not coping. And they knew that and they took me up and made some adjustments.
Wow. Okay, so let me ask you this, because it seems like your passenger, I guess your friend there, did he ever come to the point to where he realized what took place?
No, sadly, like a lot of people who don't cope with an incident like that, a contact incident or a sighting, some people just don't cope with it. It goes against everything they've built the foundation of their life and belief systems on. And his belief system was built on logical things and science. Not that I or any other researcher in the UFO field is necessarily illogical, because we're not. But in his mind, it was illogical to think it could be a UFO, because in his mind, they didn't exist. So he became the angry witness. He became the angry person who couldn't explain it, didn't want to explain it, and really didn't want to be around me anymore, because I kept asking what he could remember. And he didn't want to remember. So eventually he moved out of the flat and we lost contact. But I heard some years later that he'd been killed in a bus accident when it rolled down a bank. So it was very sad. But I do wish occasionally that I could talk to him again and see if between the time we parted and he went elsewhere, if anything shifted in his thinking.
Now, do you think, and the reason why I ask this, because I've always said to people, I think abductions aren't supposed to be remembered. I think it's supposed to take place and you're not supposed to have any memory of it. So in that case, that would fit his experience. Do you think if he were to be regressed when he was alive, that he may have recalled some of this stuff?
He may have, but let's make the distinction between contact and abduction. Abduction is very much an American model of the contact scene. We use that word a lot less outside of America. We more tend to use contact, which covers everything. But abduction implies that you're there against your will. And eventually I found out that going right back to childhood, it was not against my will at all. So the word abduction doesn't apply to me. But yes, memories may have come out. It just depends whether the person's consciousness is willing to let that memory come through, or whether it feels too unsafe for the mind and body to cope with.
Okay, so with you, and obviously this is a more profound experience than the first, does it ramp up after that? And what takes place after this event?
Well, this event was really the catalyst for several things to take place. Because from childhood, my last real memories of contact, what I now realize were memories of contact, was 12. So in that period from 12 to 20, I studied, sat all my high school exams, etc., went to Teachers College, qualified as a teacher. So there was a lot going on for me, and I don't remember contact, anything in there. I think I was just left alone to get on with it and get those qualifications or whatever, get out into life, and then bang, my first year of teaching, they came back. So from then on, it got beginning to happen very, very quickly. So many things were happening, and I found myself in the following year, 2 years, slap bang in the middle of what we call the Gisborne UFO Flap in New Zealand, which was the time when the famous Kaikoura Lights were filmed and seen on radar. So that was a massive period of time where there was a UFO flap going on here and worldwide, incidentally. But we had a lot of stuff happening in New Zealand. And I found myself having more missing time, more sightings, more memories, and they were conscious memories. I'd get into bed, I'd go to sleep, which is what they tell you to do, go to sleep, turn over, go to sleep. The next morning I'd wake up, it was all there, or snippets of it. It just depends what the experience was. But as time passed by, I began to remember more and more. And I had a catalyst incident happen in my early 30s where I woke up and found...
Hold that right there, Suzy. We're actually going to the first break, so we'll continue with that part of the story right after this break on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We'll see you guys right back here in 5 minutes. See you in a minute. All right, we are clear. And let me take a moment to welcome in our tardy viewers. I'm going to call you guys out. It's like at school, right? You get called out for being tardy. But I also want to thank you for coming out to the show as well. So we'll do both. Let me see. We had Tartar Sauce coming on in a little bit late. Appreciate you coming in, Tartar Sauce. Seeing Robbie G. Yes, thank you for coming in. Who else came on in? Who else did I see? Stargazer, you were here earlier, but I don't think I saw Tyler 420. Hey, Tyler 420, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up. Let's see. Tartar Sauce, Tyler 420, and let me see who else has come on in here. Matt Gutka. Yes, Matt Gutka. Hi, Mr. Rob G and the SORs. Appreciate you showing on up, sir. Moving through the chat, Gizmo 5978. Appreciate you coming on in, saying hello. It's been a while. Well, we appreciate you coming on back to the show here. We're gonna have an awesome one tonight. Let's see here. 420. We got Tamothman coming on in. Greetings, Suzy, Rob, and Peeps. Appreciate you coming on in, Tamothman. Who else is out there? Lead Bucket. Appreciate you saying, whoa, I've seen her testimonies before. I know she's telling the truth. Appreciate you, Lead Bucket, coming on in and joining the conversation tonight. Let's see. I'm calling everybody out, so let me see. ABWG7QE. Okay. Appreciate you coming on in. Then Amy WC is saying, the angry witness. I heard that. My friend denies it all to this day and was about something else. The Ouija board. Oh, that's evil. That part is evil. Don't ever play with Ouija boards, guys. Stay away. Let's see who else is showing. Deb from Sacramento. Deborah Rooney, the Sacramento Treat in the house. Appreciate you coming on in, Deborah Rooney. It's been a long time. Thanks for showing up here tonight. Also, Perry Marv, who's doing awesome stuff like dropping Suzy's contact info in the chat. Amazon, where you could get the books. Facebook, where you can reach out and contact. Awesome stuff. Also, the Instagram. Always on top of it, Perry Marv. Appreciate you, sir. And welcome to the show. Yes, Amy WC, getting your questions lined up in caps. Yes, might as well tell everybody. We will be posing questions hour 2. So when you put your questions in the chat, just please put them in all caps so I know what I'm looking at and I know what to tag. Appreciate you. Yeah, go ahead and order that pizza, Amy. That's a go. Go ahead and order that pizza. You might as well do it. It's a go. Let's see. Simply Coco. Hey, Simply Coco. Saying good evening, SOR. We appreciate you coming on in tonight. And I think we're pretty much, is that caught up? I think we are. Robert Lamoth Jr. Appreciate you coming on in. Hey, Rob. Appreciate you, Rob. Rob. Appreciate you, Rob. Thanks for coming on in. Yep, absolutely right. Paramarv, please remember to put your questions in caps for the host. Put them in all caps. Much easier for those to catch it. Questions are usually asked in an hour or two, if not earlier. Absolutely correct. Let's see. All right, yeah. I think we're pretty current here. Oh, WD-40 also has the right idea. Please take a moment, hit the like button. We got about a minute left, so let's take 30 seconds real quick. If you wouldn't mind, look right under your screen, hit the little thumbs up button. Let everybody know that you like the video. YouTube needs to know that so that they could kind of make sure that other people get to see it and determine if they like it or not. So we'd appreciate it if you did that. Also, if you wouldn't mind after the show leaving a comment saying what you thought about the show. That way it makes people more inclined to come on in and check it out. Andrew B, appreciate you coming on in. Spaced Out people, how are we doing tonight? How are you doing? Thanks for coming in and joining the conversation. Is there a Pam sighting? We are Pam. I didn't see Pam. We'll get to her if we see her on the next break. We're coming back here in 5 seconds, guys. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. Back half of the first hour. We're back with our guest, UFO researcher, contactee, Suzy Hansen. She's also an author, and we just talked about her book, which is The Dual Soul Connection, the Alien Agenda for Human Advancement. Guys, if you missed any of this awesome conversation, you can jump in the archive. It doesn't cost you a dime. Totally free, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Jump me back into the story that Suzy was telling us here. You were talking about at a point where you hit your 30s. So if you mind picking up your story there.
Yeah, I was on my own with the kids one night. My ex-husband was away, and we'd all gone to bed. And at some stage, I woke up and I was standing on the wooden floor of the hallway with one of my sons, and the Greys present. There were 3 Greys present who said that we were going now, and I realised that my youngest son would be left alone in the house. So some discussion took place and I refused to go, but they were very surprised because their discussion that was taking place, I was able to tap into. So this is what they do with telepathy. Sometimes they are able to cut you out. We think of telepathy as being automatically two-way, but they can actually exclude you while they converse, and they can let you back in again. But I had tapped in to their conversation, so I'd come out of the altered state that I'd been put in, and was observing and listening to what they were saying. So they made the comment that it was time for me to remember more. So what you were saying before, people have had abductions or contact, perhaps not meant to remember things, or some of them are not meant to. And I think that's true until you are ready for something, until you've achieved a certain proficiency at understanding their telepathy or whatever. So all of this training and education that goes on board the craft, you reach a point where they can then utilize you, if I can put it that way. So at that point, they said to me that I would begin to remember more, and I certainly did. From that time on, I was remembering either whole incidents and the details, such as 2 chapters in my book that are called The Test, Part 1 and Part 2. There's a massive amount of detail in there about what happened, what took place, the technology that was used, etc. And that's in more recent years been corroborated by some other experiences I've met in my travels who had drawings of exactly the technology that I had seen and could describe it in the same way. So that's that really good corroborative detailing that we find sometimes a very long time later. But it gives you strength of conviction because you know you're not the only one who saw it, and you know that you're not dreaming. So that was good.
Definitely. And as we talk about that, I always thought about this because as far as I know, here's what I'll say. I think potentially, maybe, and I just obviously can't say for sure till I have this regression, that I just maybe have probably experienced something like that, and I just don't recall it. The question I would have is, there's 8 billion of us on this planet. Why would you, if you could, think about this, why do you think they do this contact on an individual basis? Why it almost seems like one by one. Rarely do I hear groups. So why do you think they take a one by one approach? And what do you think the goal of that is?
Well, they do take groups. The late Steve Boucher in Canada, an experiencer, he was taken on board with his rock group. So that was an interesting experience that he had. But individually, it seems as if it's individual, but I have memory of being taken on board a small craft, and there are other humans there they've already picked up. And we then are transported to a larger craft where there's heaps of humans who've been brought on there, and we're divided into certain groups. We follow a grey to a certain area or a certain auditorium room or an activity or whatever. So you're not on your own, although there are those occasions, special occasions for a particular reason, where they will talk to you on your own, as they have done with me, particularly as a child. But you find yourself when you get there that you're part of a larger group, and there is a purpose and a reason and an activity, or you're learning something, or you're being tested about something. So that's the interesting side of it, is if you can imagine the logistics that were happening back in the day when all of these onboard craft things were happening, which isn't happening as much now. But back then, they might have been taking thousands and thousands of people on board large craft, either in our atmosphere or outside of our atmosphere. And the logistics of picking people up individually, transporting them to an interim craft, and then maybe to another one, all as quick as lightning to get the activity done and get them all back again, is mind-boggling.
Yes, especially when you put it like that, and it makes more sense that, and why I asked the question, because it would make more sense that you take a group of individuals, if you were trying to if your goal was to make contact with 8 billion different people. So with that being said, and in the logistics, and you also stated that it seems to not be happening more as of lately, and so that kind of just puts in your mind that maybe some of the things that they are doing are happening in phases, and we've talked about that maybe that the bringing on board and doing examinations, that was phase 1. And they moved on to phase 2, which is who knows what. How do you think about that? And I guess this is part of the alien agenda, right? So kind of what are your thoughts on that? What do you think phase 2 is, or 3 or 4, or wherever we're at in that process?
Okay, so I describe multi-layered, complex programs within an agenda. So this is the agenda to help humanity change from within, teaching us to change from within, not relying on someone to come in from space and help us, but to do it ourselves. And those programs, you've got the hybridization program, you've got the medical examination program, learning about this, learning about that, looking at how the environment is affecting us in different ways. And then you've got the people who are brought on board because they're going to be writing a book, or they're going to be producing movies, or you've got groups of scientists brought on board who are having downloads put into their minds that will open at a certain time and assist them in their work or whatever. So you've got this massive, complex combination of programs happening. And it depends on what programs you're in. You may be in one and not be doing so well as they had hoped. There is no failure on the craft. It's a matter of, okay, I think you might be better over here then. So you move from one program to another. And I have found that these tests take place where you spend a period of time learning about certain things, like learning how to use their technology, learning how to operate what I refer to as their bridging technology, which is bringing our technology and theirs together at a midpoint that we can understand, because their technology is far too advanced. We couldn't be introduced to that. We'd be like kids in a lolly shop, and we'd probably immediately misuse it. So they have to move us forward in increments all the time. And you can imagine that this is a massive undertaking for them. It's not just the greys. It's a variety of species that work together. I have seen the Nordic human-like ones on the craft. I've seen greys. I've seen mantis. I have not seen reptilian. And I have seen a whole vast range of mixtures who you can see are different because of their skull shape or their skin colouring or whatever, the way they walk, the way they move, the way they do telepathy is like listening to a different dialect, put it that way. So there are lots of differences in the entities on the craft. So these complex programs, you can't compare experiences and their experiences, because they may be in an entirely different program that's aimed at this, and I might be in one that's aimed at that. So we have to listen to everything across the board and try to take in what has happened to people, what they've been part of, what it was geared towards, what they were hoping to achieve by that. And it's very, very vast, is the only way I can describe it.
I would think that this is happening everywhere in the universe, like not just Earth. There's a lot of places with life, and I would assume that there's some level of this process going on everywhere. With that, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, and I can give you an example of when I was taken into a room by one of the grey scientists and shown the tubes of big canisters with liquid in them, and they had life forms in them. And I thought I could recognize a life form from our planet. And he said, yes, what we do is we seed newly forming planets. So we use aspects of life from different planets, and we create a creature that's suited to that environment. So I said to him, is that like playing God? And he said, no, that's genetics, biology, all those things rolled into one, and we are helping that system or that environment to grow and progress. So I think that these things are happening elsewhere. They have said we get asked, we are called upon to go and do these kinds of things because there are certain skills we have that are involved. So the greys are the front people here. They're the ones most people talk about from their contact or abductions. They're the front guys. They get a lot of flack from humans probably, but they're doing that job because that's where their skills lie. That's where they pick up craft superior, etc. But on the really huge craft, you have the other species there. For example, the mantis are the facilitators. They're really clued up, and they're the programmers. So they're all working together cohesively, and it's quite clear that they do this wherever they are called, where there is a need. And the need on our planet is simply our survival and our propensity to lean towards nuclear threat, which would be damaging for other life forms out in the universe. And just recently I was hearing a scientific piece of news where they have discovered that, in fact, reverberations from a planet can go right out into space a long way. And that's what the ETs told me back, and I think it was the 80s, told me about that and showed it to me on a hologram, that if we set off a massive bomb here, a nuclear device, etc., it's going to carry on reverberating out into our solar system and beyond. And this is what they're trying to prevent. So yes, these things have been done elsewhere, and they've become very skilled at it, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You do something as simple as drop a pebble in the water, and the waves travel in all directions until they hit something, right? It's the only thing that stops them, really. So it makes sense that could be the case. And a lot of the things I like to make logic out of, because you'll have, and I welcome always skeptics that come in and want to join the conversation, because I think they're important to the conversation too, because they ask challenging questions. But I like to point out things like, when we talk about seeding other planets, like we currently are, that is, some of the goals that we currently have as human beings. We're attempting to seed other planets with humans, right? We're trying to do that, and we're looking for habitable planets. We're looking for planets that have life out there, and we can barely even leave this planet. Some people say we're doing secret space program. I don't know, but we can barely leave the planet at this point, and we're already setting goals on looking for habitable planets and putting humans on other said planets. So we have examples of that already, just in our own behavior. also, to go, I've always had this thing about, looking at, when I look at life forms here on Earth, that we're just so comfortable with at this point. But if have you ever seen a cuttlefish before? A cuttlefish,
Yeah.
and an octopus and a squid and all these really weird, strange looking things that live right here on Earth that we are so used to. But really, if you think about it, if you had seen one of these things for the first time, they're so alien. And I could easily see any one of those things being seeded here from somewhere else. I could see an octopus not being from Earth, and at some point it was brought here. These are things that just make sense, right? But it just kind of backs up a lot of the experiences that people talk about, because there'll be skeptics say, oh, that doesn't make sense. So how do we know that? Well, let's look at examples that we have right here on the planet that we live on, and behaviors that we are doing ourselves as human beings. So with that being said, kind of going a little further, there was you on your social media recently, you posted something. You're saying people ask you, what can I do? People ask you, what can I do, is the quote. And you said the most important thing to do is to work hard on your spirituality, compassion, and integrity to help raise our mass consciousness to meet what may come. How does that align with this agenda that these extraterrestrials have? Because obviously, the main thing that's said about it is they're waiting for us to ascend, waiting for our consciousness to raise. So when you talk about the alien agenda, how does that does that meet up with the point where we ascend consciously as human beings?
Well, excuse me, I had a choking fit. They have always said that that we are kind of in the spiritual boondocks. So they use the analogy of a river or a stream. So in the middle of the river, you've got a bit of a channel, and you've got the flow of the clean water. But either side, you've got like muddy areas where the water's more stagnant. It doesn't flow. It's in shallower water. It smells. It's got rubbish people are throwing in it, etc. And they said that's where you are spiritually. You're in that area. And what we need to see is you move into the flow and raise your spirituality, because one of the reasons we've made such a mess of our planet, and that's not the only reason that the planet has deteriorated, there are other reasons too, but is we have lost our spirituality. And a variety of people responded privately to me, Rob, on that post and said, good old-fashioned decency, good old-fashioned good manners, and treating people right as you would wish to be treated yourself, and all those old-fashioned values we are losing. And as long as we're losing them, there isn't any hope of them coming down and landing on the White House lawn and everything being disclosed and we have open contact. They're just not going to do that. We have to elevate our spirituality and our compassion. We have to start valuing ourselves and our fellow man, because if we don't value ourselves, then we don't value much else either. And this is their big concern, is that we're going backwards in our spirituality, and they can't share anything with us when we are in that state. They can't share progress. They can't share science. They can't share technology, because we don't have the spiritual wherewithal to use it wisely or with integrity, or to use it in the right way. And that's their biggest concern.
Okay, so let me ask you this here. Are there any examples, because I know you've talked in your book, you talked before in other shows about the idea that we may have derived some of our technology from alien tech, and just to preface that, we've talked about potential reverse engineering projects based on extraterrestrial spaceship crashes. They retrieve these craft. They have them in some government contractor somewhere trying to figure out the tech. Is there anything that you would point to out there that says, yeah, that was probably derived from alien tech?
Yes. When I was back in the 80s and 90s, when I was taken on board on occasions, they used some technology on me because I'd had various health problems. They used some technology on me which looks into the body in real time. So they put you under this beam of something that comes down from a circular vent in the ceiling, and I don't know what that energy is or anything about it, but it comes down and it shines on your body like a light, but it's not just a light. And within that circle, which they can extend it, so they can, like an X-ray can be extended when you're lying on the table for an X-ray, they can make it move out a little bit further to incorporate your ribs or whatever. This could be extended for the whole body or just a specific area that they wanted to look into. And this technology had some phenomenal abilities. So in real time, all of the images would be coming up on their computer and they'd be storing that. And they could tap on a screen or use thought to do it. And they could change what they could see from all of your bones to all of your vascular system. Bones would disappear, it would just be all your vascular system, or it would be all of your organs, etc. They could also zero in on the tiniest little cells, so they had this amazing magnification specification. So it's interesting that when I spoke in 2018 at the UFO Congress, I had a doctor who was promoting a particular piece of technology that's been developed in the States. And I think he said there were only 6 in the States in hospitals. And he came up to me afterwards and said, I have got a PowerPoint I want you to use. You're welcome to use the images of it because we are trying now to produce exactly what you're talking about. And he showed me this multi-million-dollar machine that was designed to look into the body. So it was like it was trying to copy what I had seen. Now, you may say that this is a natural progression that medical science might take, that they want to see into the body. But it's interesting to note that leading up to the production of this machine, they had developed from cadavers, they had developed the same sort of imagery that could be produced on a long screen for medical students to study. So they could click on the computer and it would show a vascular system. Click on it would show the bones, the skeleton, etc. So it was virtually identical to what I had seen. And so, he was very interested in that and said, use this, Suzy, because, where has this technology come from? It's just so closely trying to achieve what you're talking about. That's what we're trying to achieve. And I believe they've moved further along the line of developing that over the last 10 years. And but I can give other examples of technology that I've seen on a craft that we now have produced. For example, a vein viewer.
Let's do this. Let's do this because we're actually going to the break. Let's save that one for right after the break. We have about 30 seconds here. And just so I'll say real quick, because there's a lot of people out there that feel like fiber optics may have been derived from crash alien tech. And I've heard something as weird as Velcro. Someone's like Velcro may have been, and I'd love to get like the backstory on that. Like if this was actually done, the people who reverse engineered this stuff, I'd love to hear stories from them. I think it'd be awesome. But we're going to go ahead and get into the rest of this story right after the break. We're at the top of the hour. We'll be right back.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear. And Suzy, we're off camera for 5 minutes. I'll see you back in a moment. All right. Welcome back, Spaced Out Radio. We are in after hour number 2, coming back from radio here in about 30 seconds, guys. This is the hour for your questions. You guys have definitely posted some already. I've tagged them for later on this hour. Please consider continuing to put questions in, and we'll ask them to Suzy later on in the show. We'll be starting back here in about 10 seconds here. Let's get ready to go, guys. All right, and here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We're in after hour number 2 with CONTACTEE UFO researcher Suzy Hansen, all the way from New Zealand. Let's not forget. Hours 1 and 2, she's been talking extraterrestrial contact, the alien agenda, and a lot more. We'll be getting into more of that right now. If you missed any of the conversation, free in the archive. Free. Free. YouTube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. So before the break, Suzy, we were I had asked you if there was any, tech out there that these groundbreaking, game-changing technology that human beings have just seemed to come up with. Let's not forget, the technological age is not very old at all, and we have so many advancements technologically, and then there's some things where the question mark is like, wow, where did that come from? Because it just came out of nowhere. And you were kind of going over some things here, and you were going to mention something else that maybe came from alien tech potentially. And what was that thing?
Yeah, I'll be brief, but it was just something that turned up. I, along with Steve Boucher and a couple of other experiences, were able to describe a handheld object that could do what the big machine I described previously could do, and that was they could hold it on your arm, for example, and see into that arm, see what they want to look at inside your arm. And in particular, they were looking at the vascular structure. And it's interesting to note that about 2014, I think, because I saw that back in the 90s, and in 2014, we came up with something similar. And to me, my memory of it was like a badminton, a small bat, a table tennis bat with all these red lights on one side, which they could shine on the body. And it's interesting to note that the vein viewer, which is now used in many hospitals, is exactly the same. It's got red light technology, and it helps the nurses to find the vein. When people's veins collapse or they want to put a lure in, etc., they can find it easily. So it's a tiny piece of technology like that. And then years later, you see something absolutely identical. That seems rather strange to me. But there's a lot of other things that have been mentioned over the years by experiencers, which we're now seeing out there. Back in the 90s, I saw what we now know as a tablet. But the advanced version on a craft had no obvious power source. It had 3D imagery, etc. But in every other way, it looked like today's tablet. So how much have they been feeding us and presenting to us through scientists, and how much has been back engineered, I don't know. But in 2018, when I spoke about the technology at the conference, I was threatened on a Saturday night by two guys, military type guys, in the corner of the corridor. They followed me down the corridor, kind of bullying me, telling me to go home to New Zealand and never talk about any of this again, especially the technology. So that kind of makes you wonder when you're an experiencer who has things like that. I said I wasn't going to give it up. I was going to keep going. They said, okay, have it your way, Ms. Hansen, and off they went. And the next day I was sprayed with a concoction that I later found out was virulent lung bugs. And within 24 hours or so of flying back to New Zealand, I was in hospital, nearly died. So someone is sitting on a lot of technology that they're possibly making a lot of money out of, and they don't want someone like me who's seen something like that on a craft talking about it, because that makes that link, and they don't want that link being made.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that for a moment, because and this kind of ties into age of disclosure. It was mentioned in the film that someone was talking about the idea that back in the beginning, when these crash retrievals would have been some of the early ones, were ended up with the government contractors. And then after so many years, the people within these government positions change positions, new people come in, and then all of a sudden the new person isn't aware of the things that have been handed over to these contractors. And so they're working, diligently on deriving new technology from these crashes and then making money off of these things. And it would make sense that if those guys were approaching you, that they probably had something to do with the government contractors. And then that puts a whole nother spin on it, because there are a lot of people that feel like there's these like men in black that come out there, and they normally associate those type of figures with government entities, when you may have individuals out there, and it sounds like it, that may be tied directly to government contractors. So they may have like muscle guys out there doing this sort of work, trying to get people to stop talking, just like if you're connecting dots like that. That's very, very interesting. But let me ask you this. So this is one thing that I've always had an issue with. I can definitely see, us getting some good ideas from crash retrievals, which obviously we're creating these new innovations with our own materials that we have here. But as far as like reverse engineering craft and making a replica of what it is that we have in these contractors, do you feel like we have the ability? Because I look at it like, if these things are coming from other star systems, we'll use 3i Atlas for instance, this comet that just passed through here. They're saying it's potentially made up of things that we may not understand yet, some elements of it. And I just feel like maybe, different parts of the universe are going to have access to different elements. And then I would wonder, if you had a craft made in the star system that had elements we don't have here, then how would we even be able to reverse engineer a craft, because we don't have the materials to make it? It's like, you having vibranium spaceship, and we don't have vibranium here, so we could definitely not recreate that. Do we even have the ability to harness the technology that we retrieve, do you think? What do you think?
Well, I remember I got to know the late Dr. Roger Lear. He spoke out here and stayed at my place, and I spoke at a few conferences with him, so I got to know him. And I remember him saying that, you've got this thing in front of you and you don't know how it works. You don't know what it's for. So you kind of take it to pieces and you make guesses about it, and you use imagination to imagine what it could be used for, and then you try to work backwards and create that thing. So that seemed like a roundabout way of doing something, but as years have gone by, what Roger said has made more sense to me. And I think of a lot of the technology that I saw on craft, and I think I might be about the only experiencer out there saying this, is that I sincerely believe they've been doing this bridging technology halfway between us, halfway between them, and this may be some of the technology that we're seeing coming out. Because I have seen groups of up to 250 scientists in an auditorium-like situation. They're in an altered state. They don't know they're on a craft. They're just happy. They think they're in a conference or whatever. And they're being given information. They're being given thought implants, what I call thought seeds or downloads, into their consciousness and their brains to take away with them, and they will have insights and they will make inventions and they'll make progress in certain things that they're working on. And maybe there's some of this technology we've seen coming out, like the tablets, etc., which I saw back in the 90s, early 90s, maybe they are assisting us to advance in our technology to a place where we can start to meet them. So we have, for example, a lot of their technology they use consciousness, and we cannot at this point imbue technology with consciousness. We have been trying through, for example, people who have disabilities are able to move a cursor by being attached to a wire that assists their brain signals to move a cursor. So that's an advancement in that respect, but it's not really quite the consciousness that they're using in their technology. And this is the big stumbling block, and it's not coming through in our technology as I would have thought it might be coming through by now. So as to whether there's stuff being back engineered or we're acquiring information from them that's moving us forward in increments, I don't know. But I know that there's a lot of money to be made out there if you can get hold of some technology and make it work and it does something great. But I would like to think it would be for the betterment of humanity and not to be lining certain people's pockets as such.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, until we figure out a way to change the thinking in this world, it's always going to be about profit.
Well, that's the spirituality level they're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to get, and we were talking to Dr. Rudy yesterday, and I always say this, these governments that do these dastardly things, right, as a group, individually, they're human beings, and you hope that they tap into their own compassion and maybe change their way of thinking, but I don't know. I'm hopeful that would be the case, but I guess we'll see. Okay. So one thing that I wanted to ask you, because I heard you say this here, that you had pushed to have the MOD files in New Zealand released. Now, how is the UFO subject viewed in general in New Zealand, and have you seen it change, or is it more, or are they more open to having the conversation now versus maybe 20 years ago?
Well, nothing has changed. We lobbied to get the MOD files released in 2010, 2011. They were released in two caches. There was a lot of material that we have in our archive that wasn't in the files. So we know that there must be either some that have been withheld until a person's lifespan is over, or they're in intelligence files because they're too hot to handle. So really, in terms of the media, we do see the occasional stuff being published, mainly from the States. There's just pretty much a blanket on top of anything local reaching in the newspapers, or if it does get into the newspapers, it's usually something like lanterns or misidentified aircraft or something like that, and someone solves the problem and it makes it look like UFOs don't exist. They can all be explained by this or that. Our government hasn't changed its stance. Our MOD, I should say, their stance when they released the files was all unusual aerial phenomenon can be explained by natural phenomenon or misidentified aircraft. That's it. They haven't changed their stance on that. There's been no conversation on that. Despite what is happening in the States and the revelations coming out, we don't have any shift there at all. But the population has shifted in that there's a lot more people interested in the subject. There are more people starting to report what they're seeing, study stuff on the internet. So there is that interest there at a public level, but not at an official level.
And I'm sure the answer is the same for most other countries, but what do you think the reasoning for them wanting to take this stance is?
There's too many things to be explained in New Zealand. We have a very big and rich history of UFO sightings for such a small, far away, little populated country. We have got this massive history, and we're very fortunate that some of our veteran UFO researchers in the early days, in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, were ex-Air Force, so they were very careful, or ex-aviation, like my colleagues were air traffic controllers and pilots in UFOCUS NZ, who worked for me. So we had this really good background of knowledge there, and a lot of our historic stuff has been very well documented by those former Air Force people. So it's very credible, it's very broad, and really the MOD and the government probably don't want to go there because they'd have to do a lot of explaining or maybe change their stance. And as is typical of New Zealand, we kind of look to Australia and the UK, because we belong to the Commonwealth, to see what they're doing, and they're doing the same as us. So we're probably not going to move an inch until they do.
I feel like, and we're going to kind of go merge this into something else that I've heard you speak on before, but I have I think if we were to look at individuals in the public that may have more information, and I guess not necessarily the public, because these are technically, some of these are government entities, but they're everyday people that work at these places. So you have police officers who have these dash cams and that run 24/7 and catch weird things all the time. You have you have also air traffic controllers, right? And I know you've spoken on this before, where you had interviewed some of these air traffic controllers, because they're looking at radar, right? So they're going to see something on there that is giving that has some sort of signature. And a lot of the time, we can lean on the Chicago O'Hare UFO incident, where the thing is sitting right over the tarmac and everybody sees it. And obviously, this had to come up on radar, or at the very least, air traffic control had to be aware of this. And then they kind of just said it didn't happen. No one reported it. They were caught in that lie, showing that the FAA kind of basically was covering things up. So what type of information were you getting from air traffic controllers? And then also, to merge that into age of disclosure, how did you feel when you saw a representative of the FAA, I guess a former director potentially, who came out and made a statement saying that we definitely are not alone? And for me, that's the FAA admitting that they have been seeing things, and they have come to a conclusion that these things aren't ours, and we're not alone. So start with the air traffic controllers that you've spoken to, and then how you felt about the FAA making that statement.
Well, the two of the air traffic controllers that I've associated with over 20 years were my colleagues in UFOCUS NZ, and I asked them to join me because we wanted to focus on aviation sightings and give the whole subject some credibility with people who are involved in aviation and can tell a difference between something that's likely an aircraft and likely is not. So these guys were great. They were both also private pilots. John Cordy was quite elderly, and he was one of the air traffic controllers from the Kaikoura Lights. So he was the chief controller in Wellington Airport when the lights were registered on radar. And John was interviewed on Ancient Aliens, etc. And he used to ring me up every time Ancient Aliens was going to be on television again in New Zealand. He'd ring me up and he'd go, "It's Mr. Notorious," because this guy, so-called expert, was brought onto Ancient Aliens to decry everything John said in his interview and make it sound like the radar in New Zealand was faulty. And of course it wasn't. John said it wouldn't be worth his life if his radar on his watch was faulty and putting anyone at risk. So we have these people who call you to be interviewed and then set about debunking you on the same program. That just doesn't go down well. But these guys, they had a foot into aviation and air traffic control in New Zealand, so they had their ear to the ground to hear what's happening. Graham Opie, senior air traffic controller at Hamilton Airport, worked with me, and he saw a UFO from the control tower, and that went big time. It was in the newspapers. He was interviewed all around the world. He had Al Jazeera ringing him, BBC. It was really great, and it brought to the New Zealand public the idea that these are credible, highly trained professionals, as well as being private pilots themselves and having been in the Air Force, both of them. So if these guys said this was a UFO, then it was a UFO. They could identify it. So that was really great. But when I looked at the documentary, Age of Disclosure, I was pleased to hear a lot of the admissions that were taking place. But I still think that the world is super focused on American disclosure. And I think that the rest of the world needs to stand up and be counted as well. We're kind of sitting back thinking, well, let America do all the work. But, I think of countries like Britain, Italy, New Zealand, Australia has a massive history of UFO sightings. Researchers like me, I have got a massive archive of New Zealand sightings, and all of this stuff is being ignored. So it's okay to hear someone from FAA saying something being put on TV, but what I'm seeing at present is all of the genuine, hardworking investigators and researchers who've been around decades and have done the hard work going out to the site where something was seen, interviewing witnesses and trudging to a possible landing site, etc., out in the bush somewhere. We're being sidelined in the same way that experiencers at present are being sidelined. And it's the same faces that we're seeing over and over representing the UFO field. It's the same faces singing from the same songbook. And I think it's time for some variety. It's time for the rest of the world and governments and CAA in New Zealand, etc., to be standing up and making some statements as well and doing a bit of their own homework with their own researchers in their own countries.
And I totally agree with you on that. I agree on both points, and I want to speak to both of those as well, because the whole America, the focus being on America, I think that's very true. And I think the reason being is that maybe because America has their thumb on everyone else and is telling them not to get involved with this conversation and that they'll handle it. I think it's more than that, because you hear of crash retrievals happening in other countries. America's right there to get involved with it. And I think that's more what's going on. And they're hoping that America takes the lead and makes these announcements, because I always, wonder when Russia or one of these other countries, China, any of these other countries that are retrieving these craft are just going to say, hey, we're going to make a statement. We're going to come out and say something. And it's like, why wouldn't they attempt to do that before the United States? But then it just comes back to the United States has their thumb on everyone. And I think that's kind of what it gets down to. And to talk to the other piece of that, the talking heads and the certain group of people that they seem to go to for this conversation, I think what's going to happen with that is our community has been so niche and just in the corner over here for so long. I think that once it's brought to the big stage and gets everyone's awareness, they're going to see that, but they're going to dive deeper and want more knowledge on the subject. And I think that's when a lot of the people who really should be getting shine right now, I think that's when it'll kick in. So I think there'll be people that'll be discovering Suzy Hansen here soon. And a lot of the people out there that are doing work. And as long as we continue doing that work, I think we'll be able to have our voices heard, because there's only so much information they're going to give. NDAs are blocking a lot of their information, and people are going to want more data. So I think they're definitely going to end up discovering.
It just depends whether someone's trying to control the narrative, because if someone is trying to control the narrative, they're not going to let other people like worldwide researchers in. And we see, a lot of these scientific conferences that are happening now, they're all PhDs, etc., and talking about sightings and that, which people like myself and many other researchers worldwide, we've been doing that for decades. It's not a new thing, but they're treating it like a new thing, and that they get the broadcast. I don't know if there's a narrative control developing here. Then I don't know who will be brought out of the woodwork to talk about their stuff or not, or whether they'll just be left to be quiet.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of the internet and YouTube, because we're doing shows like this that'll be right there for those individuals to come and watch. They'll come and see this show, and that's why we do it. And we'll be right back here with our guest, Suzy Hansen, CONTACTEE UFO researcher, Spaced Out Radio After Hours radio show. We'll see you right after the break. All right, we are clear. Yeah. Great stuff. I agree with you though. They have this click, and there's other. I've seen new people, like brand new people, just pop up on the scene.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're part of that circle. They're part of that little group too. And it's like, well, this guy I haven't even heard this guy talk about UFOs before, but today he's deciding to talk about UFOs, and now he's part of that circle.
Yeah.
And I think that'll change, though. I think it'll change.
It will. And I wrote in my book, Rob, actually, a session on board a craft with the Greys, and they warned us of this. They said people will come out of the woodwork in all directions. There'll be overnight. They'll have overnight fame and notoriety, and just let it go. Just keep doing your work. It's a phase and a stage that humanity's going to go through. Everyone's going to want a piece of the cake, but then things will get tougher and things will get more in depth, as you said, and those people won't have the answers. That's when they go back to the experiencers, the long-time researchers, and that's when they'll share the information. I hope that that's how it'll happen. Certainly, that's how they predicted it.
And there, that sounds like that prediction is absolutely right, because it makes sense. And I've always said this, right? I've always said I think it should start at a nuts and bolts. Hey, craft are here. We're seeing these. They've landed. They're coming in and out the ocean. Start there. We've seen things get out of these craft. They're not human. Here's different cases. For those people who've never even thought about the subject, that's the entry for them. That's
entry point, exactly. Yep, I totally agree. Yeah.
And then for them, they dig deeper. Now they're digging deeper, and then they find out, oh, they're taking people. They're doing okay. Oh, they've given these messages, so they're gonna get into it. Same way that we did. I think is going to be the same progression for everybody else. So.
Yeah.
But it is frustrating, though. It is frustrating to turn on the TV and see the same exact people say, and it would be different if it was the old researchers like you talk about, like the original, like if Stanton Freeman's still here and all the original guys. It'd be different if they were going to those people. Those were the talking heads. But we have these brand new people who may or may not understand the history of ufology. It kind of seemed like they came out of nowhere, sort of thing. So I agree with that frustration with that as well.
Yeah, and it's difficult to know whether they're just people who are rushing in through the open door, as Robert Salas says. You open the door and all the wrong people rush in. I reckon that's a really good expression. He said, you don't know whether it's that or whether they're key people who've been selected by someone higher up to play a particular role. That's the one that really worries me, is that we can't differentiate. Are these people popping up? Who are they and why are they popping up? What's their reason? It's really hard to know. It's getting more and more difficult. But I was really surprised to see Elizondo both as narrator and as one of the people being interviewed, etc., the focal point. I was surprised to see that. I would prefer to have had an independent narrator in the series.
Yeah, I know someone was watching a show where someone said Tom Hanks would have been a good guy to have narrate that. I agree. Tom Hanks would have done awesome in that.
Yeah.
It would be cool to have somebody like that narrate. I agree with that. And then kind of speaking as well to what we were just saying there about some of these people and their intentions, because these new people, you just don't know, right? And I when I look around the UFO community, especially the more that I'm acclimated to it and more people I talk to, you have to wonder who's in it for the money. Who's really in it for the truth. And that's a big thing for me. Like, you're supposed to be in this to get answers to the questions that you have. Like, that's literally the journey, is to have these questions based on experiences, want answers to these things, then that's the path and the journey that we're on. So yeah, I agree. You have to look twice at a lot of people within ufology, and you'll really find that some people just aren't in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of hatchet jobs going on at the moment. But it's like that across the board. That's humanity. That's the thing that they want us to get rid of, And
it's sad. Yeah. It can be disheartening sometimes, but the thing is that you just continue to do your work. As long as you continue to do your work,
that's right.
Then I think all that other stuff will get weeded out.
I think so. Yep.
And we got about 20 seconds here before we come back, guys. You've been awesome tonight in the chat, posting links for Suzy. You guys are just great, like always. We're going to go ahead and get to your questions here in just a moment. So let's get ready to go. 5 seconds here. Let's get ready to go. Last 20 minutes, what I guess. Here we go. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio and After Hours Radio Show. We are on the back half of hour number 2. Means we only have 23 minutes left with our guest, Suzy Hansen. Has been totally awesome tonight. Contactee, researcher. We just want the truth. We just want answers here. And we're talking about the alien agenda, much more. If you missed any of the conversation, it's in the archives. Free, youtube.com/The Spaced Out Radio. And jumping back into the conversation, we have some audience questions. Let me make sure we can get this here. Okay, we have the Roswell Alien. Great name. With the question for you. Is there any alien species that lives on Earth, whether in the ocean or in another dimension, in your opinion?
Well, we've been told that there is a species that lives on Earth. And John Ramirez, who's former CIA, has said that humanity has met them, that he has made that statement. So that's an interesting one. Supposedly the ant people that the Hopis speak about, and on one occasion I have seen an ant person on a craft. So that's the first part of your question. In the ocean, yes, they have underground bases. They might come from somewhere else, but they've established undersea bases, I should say. As to whether they live there permanently, I don't know. And definitely the latter part of the conversation, in another dimension, yes. I have said, as a medium myself, I know that I have seen entities, that don't belong in the world we're living in. They're in another dimension, but they belong to this planet. And I have been told by the Greys that they belong here as much as we do. And sometimes they slip in and out of our reality and can be seen by people who have the ability to see those things. So yes, whatever we do on this level is going to affect them. So that takes the whole nuclear thing and the wars to another level. What damage are we doing to those who live in another dimension around the planet? And this whole dimension thing is real, because on one occasion I was taught to fly a scout craft, and during that event I was told we're going to go outside of the dimension we're in now, and he described it as going out into another dimension, moving through the planet and coming back in on the other side. So we did not physically go through the Earth. We went through the Earth's place that is held in another dimension. So these dimensions do exist around our planet, and they may well be inhabited by a variety of entities.
All right, we have, let's see, Amy WC saying ignore her questions, but let me see here. Let me ask this one. Well, here's Cody Eiler talking about what we were talking about earlier. Velcro was invented by a hunter while pulling out stickers from his dog's fur. I think that's a joke. Paramar actually put it in the chat that it was actually invented by some Swiss person back in the 1940s. So to clear that up, it was just, you know, what people say in ufology, that aliens are the reason why we have Velcro, which obviously is not true. Let's see here. We have T. Fontini, who asked this question and be interested to know. I mean, it may be just, you probably won't know, but your opinion. Do aliens play any sports, interact like we do? Like, do they do any of the things that we do? Or are they just so totally different that they don't do things that we do?
Well, I don't know about playing sports, but they do interact with each other, and I have seen that taking place with producing things out of the ether in the air and decorating. So I've seen kids in a playroom where they produce something with their mind, a crystalline structure, and then, like kids do with blocks, the other children then begin adding pieces to it until you've got this spectacular thing hanging in the air. So yes, they do. I've also seen a human teenager playing with some alien children in a very large room, and he was pretending, he was a soccer player, and he was pretending to play soccer with them with an orb of light, which they, every time he went towards it and put on showmanship of, you know, doing a header or kicking it or whatever, they would shift the ball away, and there was a great deal of humor and fun happening in that room. So they do interact with each other, probably not in the same way that we do, but they have their own version of it.
This is also definitely a good question here, and just one I wouldn't have thought to ask. Amy saying, how much do alien species hate each other and throw stuff? Do they not? Are they immortal enemies out there, or do they all get along, and what do they do?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't met all alien species to be able to judge that, but certainly the ones that I've been in contact with are very controlled, is one way of saying it. They have a greater handle on their emotions, and they're very logical and they're very analytical. So they're quite mature in the way that they approach things. An example of that is being shown a whole lot of images of future Earth changes that were pretty terrible. And then we were all sobbing and terribly upset, and the entity just cleared all of that away for us, and he left us in a state where we could examine what we'd seen without the terrible emotion. We could look at it analytically and logically and think about our future in a different emotional state.
All right. And Amy WC also asked, do you do dream analysis?
No, I don't. I think about my own dreams and whether I think that they were a dream or something else. I had what I thought was a dream the other night, and 2 days later, what was discussed in a dream happened. So was that a dream, or was I in the astral state being given a warning about something by my mother?
Here's a question from T. Fantini as well. It's really a statement, but I want to turn this into a question. Do you think that aliens, these races that are coming in, have any sort of politics, any sort of semblance of like society that we understand to be society, social structure? Do you believe that they have any of that going on? Do you think that what we do translates out there once we leave planet Earth? I guess is more of a better question.
Yeah, I think it's more that they have associations, they have agreements, they have projects that they work cooperatively on. In terms of their own society on the craft, they have recreation, they have entertainment, they have learning abilities, and they can lie on their own shelf bed, what I call a shelf bed, and it will harmonize their energy. So they have a lot of things available to us that assist them to have a functioning and cooperative society. As to whether that's the case for all of them out there, I don't know.
Do you think they have a sense of economics or any sort of structure like that? You know, like what is do they barter, do you think, or how do you think they, trade with maybe other species? Do you think any of that is going on out there?
I don't know. I haven't had any direct association with anything like that, but I know that they can produce just about anything they need on these big craft. Obviously they will need to get the resources from somewhere at some time, but they seem to be very self-sufficient.
Okay, and you talked about earlier being approached by these couple of gentlemen who may have been tied to some sort of contractor. Now that we kind of process that, have you had any other threatening situation or something that you could point to that maybe had you scared?
Yes, the first time I spoke in the States back in 1999 at the UFO Congress in Laughlin, I had two people come, a man and a woman, come to my room, come into the room and block the doorway so I couldn't leave. And they threatened me and said virtually the same stuff. You know too much about certain things and we don't want you talking about it, so go home to New Zealand and don't talk about it again. And they said you wouldn't want anything to happen to your two sons. So that was pretty awful. They knew I had children, and that was a real open threat. So this kind of thing has happened. I have been tailed in Australia. I've been taken aside at an airport in Australia. I've had a speech completely disrupted and upset in Australia. So yes, it happens to experiencers, I guess, who are saying something that they don't want put out there. And I guess I have been doing that, talking about technology and the environment on the craft and what they're here for. It would be easy for humans rising to the top and being the go-to people about the UFO subject, which seems to be happening at the moment. It would be easy for them to manipulate the idea of why they're here. And if experiencers say something different, it's natural that they'll want to silence us on that.
Do you agree that as some of these whistleblowers are saying that some people may have been unalived behind the subject?
Yeah, well, when I was at the 2018 conference and had all that happen to me, being threatened and sprayed with something, another researcher who arrived a couple of days earlier was also sprayed 2 days before me. Same circumstances, same unusually dressed woman who basically did this in a lift. She did the same to me. And he became very ill and immediately and died in Phoenix Hospital on the Wednesday night. And I came back to New Zealand and nearly died in Tauranga Hospital, and had exactly the same thing happen to me, because I made contact with his fiancée and had a long talk with her and found out all of the details. It was identical to what happened to me. So someone was trying to take us out.
Wow. Okay.
And I'd just like to say, there's a lot of talk about whistleblowers being given protection and legal rights, etc., but none of that is being offered to experiencers.
Yeah, and when we think about that sort of thing, people think, yeah, that stuff just happens in movies. I recently was watching a video talking about, I guess, the nephew to the dictator over there in nephew, cousin, some sort of relative to the dictator over there in North Korea. And this gentleman had been accosted by two ladies in the airport. They kind of just grabbed him and rubbed his eyes, and it was something they rubbed in there that immediately essentially killed him. And there's definitely things like that are happening, is my point with that. And it could happen behind this subject just as easily as that.
Yeah, it's been happening for decades. I mean, I've know a lot of people through I've been in this subject for 50 years now. In March this year, Rob, it's 50 years that I've worked in sightings and contact, and I've talked to a lot of people who've had a lot of bad things done to them, experiencers and researchers.
Let me ask you this. Jose Sanchez wants to know, do you think that the Dwight D. Eisenhower UFO ET meeting actually occurred? And was there a film taken involving their landing that you're aware of?
I don't know. I'm sort of not an expert on the American politics side of the UFO field. I'm more into sightings and contact.
All right.
Sorry, I can't answer that.
And let me try to answer that. Do you think the Dwight D. Eisenhower UFO ET meeting actually occurred? And actually, Jose, if you go over to my page, I actually did a show recently about that, and I think it will at least have you thinking and maybe come to some conclusions based off of the evidence that we laid out. Timelines make sense, and when you talk about Truman going into Eisenhower, you talk about this Majestic 12, MJ12 thing document that had come up later, and I kind of lay out a timeline where it's just like, okay, the timeline wise, a lot of these things make sense. You can find a video over on my channel, youtube.com/@MrRobG. Let's see, what else do we have here? Mr. Melton wants to know if you have any idea when disclosure is coming.
Well, that's anyone's guess, but really, I think as an experiencer, that those who are in charge of disclosure are actually the ETs. They're waiting for our readiness, and when our readiness reaches a certain point, then they're going to show up more often and show their craft more often, and actually people will see entities with the craft. And this is what they advised us back in the 90s, that it would happen eventually. So it all is to do with our readiness, our spirituality, our compassion, our ability to cooperate and work together and stop the wars and come to agreements, put people first, put the planet first. So really, when we talk about disclosure, a lot of people are thinking of files being released in the States, important papers, certain statements being made. But hang on a minute, look at the rest of the world. There's a lot to be done in disclosure. And what is disclosure? Is it papers, or is it learning to cooperate and work together so that this open contact maybe can happen one day? Because it's not going to happen just because we've released some papers and found out some information. We know we've been lied to and deceived and had stuff withheld, sometimes maybe for very good reasons. Certainly the ETs said that in the future some stuff would be withheld for good reason. But gee, we need to really work on ourselves as humanity, because we're in kindergarten when it comes to being able to associate with an advanced, intelligent race.
As Benno from Oz says, well said, Suzy. That's a great outlook or perspective. We do appreciate that. And let's see. Amy WC is saying, you mentioned alien entertainment. Is that us?
No, but they did say that reached into my mind and picked out a word and said, we think you are fickle. And that's probably a really good description of humans. We're fickle, we're indecisive, we make bad decisions, or we change our decisions very rapidly. But no, the entertainment I was referring to was an advanced form of virtual reality, which can take them anywhere in the universe.
All right. And then Carrie Doyle was asking, do you know anything about their clothing, such as are they allergic to certain fabrics like cotton, linen? And then I guess, what are those bodysuits made out of that a lot of people report?
Well, the fabric that I felt on a number of occasions holding hybrid babies and alien babies was like a plastic. And it was decades ago. It was like a soft fabric, but it had a memory to it. So they could do certain things with it. So they could imbue it with warmth. They could imbue it with softness. They could imbue it with the ability to absorb all kinds of things that they could do. And I was quite horrified to think that it was a form of plastic on a baby. But of course, last year I bought myself a parka, a raincoat kind of thing. And when it felt really soft and nice, and when I read what it was made out of, it was recycled plastic. So maybe it's not so bad after all, but I know that what they wear is a synthetic. It's cotton and linen belong to our society, and obviously they've developed something very different that suits their skin. And their skin is like it's like velvet to touch. So it actually has like a pile, if I can put it that way, on its surface that moves. So I guess what they wear on their skin has to be aligned with the needs of that kind of skin.
All right. And let me see. Amy WC is asking, are the Pleiades, I guess she's saying she spelled it incorrectly, are they fake friendly? They're supposed to be friendly.
I don't know. I haven't met people or beings who've called themselves Pleiadians. I have met what we call the Nordics, who look like very tall, very angular, very good-looking, Nordic-looking people. But as to what nationality they are or what species they are, I don't know. They didn't tell me, but they're the ones who taught me to fly a scout craft.
All right. And let's see here. Okay. And we have Matt Gutka saying Suzy is spot on. Benno from Oz agrees 100%. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get you to talk about where people can find your book. We've been posting it all night in the chat, but if you could verbally let everybody know where they can find the book.
Okay, my book is on Amazon. It's written in French and it's written in English. There's two versions. You can get in English, you can get both the Kindle and the paperback. I'm on Facebook under Suzy Hansen. I've got a YouTube channel, Suzanne Hansen. And I run New Focus NZ in New Zealand, which I founded back in the year 2000. That's probably about it. I belong to ISA, which is the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. I'm on their executive committee, founding member, and I'm the New Zealand representative and Australasian continental director, so I do a lot of work there. And I have Communicator Link, which is a website for advocacy and assistance and support of experiencers and abductees, contactees.
Awesome stuff. And let's see. Benno from Oz is saying, check Suzy out on Breaking the Silence too.
Oh, yes, that's right. I've recently done an interview with Steve Neal and he's animated it, which I'm very grateful for. It's a chapter 26 in my book. He's animated.
Awesome stuff. And I I'm doing a show on my channel coming up here. I'll probably do it tomorrow. And I'm asking the question, where are the bodies? What would be your answer to that if you had to speculate?
What bodies?
The non-human intelligence. Where do you think they are? Who do you think has possession?
Oh, you mean recovered bodies, you mean?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm outside of the States when it comes to those sorts of things. That's a difficult one. Maybe military.
I'm feeling like probably military, and I'm going to elaborate on that more on the show tomorrow. But I just, age of disclosure, they released this graph showing the legacy program, which
That's
showed
right.
CIA, showed DOE, Department of Energy, government contractors, United States Air Force. And I just feel like if we're giving the craft to these contractors, they're not going to give the bodies to the contractor. That's just not going to happen. So
No.
Department of Energy is probably working with the contractors on propulsion, reverse engineering. Then it leaves the United States Air Force is likely the ones holding these bodies, which it makes sense because a lot of these underground bases that people talk about are related, or Air Force bases are related to the United States Air Force. So I think that's the answer, but we'll find out hopefully one day here. Appreciate you, Suzy, for taking the time, coming in all the way from New Zealand and joining us here tonight. Do you have anything you want to leave the audience with? Any last quick word?
Keep doing your research and keep working on your spirituality and yourself, because you'll become the change, you'll become the example, and keep talking to people and spreading the subject. People are ready for it now, more so than they've ever been.
Conversations.
Great way to leave it. Appreciate you, Suzy. We'll talk again soon.
You're listening to
Okay.
After Hours
Bye.
with Mr.
Thank
Rob,
you, everyone.
on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break here. And if you wouldn't mind, let's please take the time and hit the likes. I don't know where we're at, but we would love to get them as high as we can. Putting on a free show, all we ask for is some interaction with that like button. Hit the like or dislike. Let us know what you thought. See you back here in just a minute. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Space Out Radio After Hours radio show. We're coming back from break here in 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Here we go. All right. Welcome back. Space Out Radio After Hours radio show. We have now kicked it on into After Hour number 3. We want to go ahead and thank our guest tonight, Suzy Hansen, joining us from all the way on the other side of the world. So we appreciate her adjusting her time to make it here tonight for the show. Make sure you show your love for that conversation here by hitting that like button. Also, go ahead and jump in the archives if you missed that convo. It's totally awesome, totally free. YouTube.com/Space Out Radio. Now it's about time that we go ahead and jump into some Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries. Because Steve Stockton is always awesome. And as we said the other night, these are real stories. And it's awesome that I'm sure the families appreciate that there's someone out there bringing these stories to light and keeping the conversation going. We're going to go ahead and jump into that right about now. Let's go.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries.
Mysteries of New England. Known for its quaint small towns, colonial roots, crisp autumn colors, almost 15 million New Englanders call this region home. Though full of natural wonder and extraordinary beauty, New England is no stranger to the unexplained and has some incredibly dark secrets in its illustrious past. New Englanders are fascinated by unsolved cases that engage them emotionally and play on their fears. From the unsolved Lizzie Borden axe murders to the disappearance and murder of teenage lifeguard Molly Bish. In this video, we'll examine 10 of New England's most prolific and unexplained mysteries, murders, and disappearances. Join me. Let's walk and see. The murders of Andrew and Abby Borden, a.k.a. the Lizzie Borden axe murders. On a hot summer morning in August of 1892, one of the most infamous mysteries and murder cases in American history occurred in Fall River, Massachusetts, when 70-year-old Andrew Borden and his wife, Abby, were murdered by an axe in their home. Andrew's then 32-year-old daughter, Lizzie, reportedly found her father's body after returning home from morning errands. The family's maid, Bridget Sullivan, discovered Abby's body in the second-floor guest room. Though generally viewed as a reputable community member, Lizzie was deemed a suspect in the double homicide, and her trial began on June 5, 1893. Prosecutors alleged she tried to purchase poison the day before the murders and burned one of her dresses several days later. Fingerprint testing was common in Europe at the time, but the Fall River police were skeptical of its accuracy and never tested for prints on a hatchet found in the Borden's basement. The fact that no blood was found on Lizzie helped convince the all-male jury that she was incapable of the gruesome crime, and she was acquitted on June 20th, 1893. Some have speculated that the killer was Andrew Borden's illegitimate son, William Borden, who snapped after Andrew failed to submit to his extortion demands regarding finances. However, no other suspects were ever charged with the murders, and Lizzie succumbed to pneumonia in Fall River on June 1st, 1927. The Borden family home has since been transformed into the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum, which continues to attract visitors to this day. Located at 230 2nd Street, visitors at the bed and breakfast report doors opening and closing on their own, along with a mysterious floral scent that some attribute to the Borden's restless spirits. Next, we have the kidnapping and murder of Holly Parainen. On August 5, 1993, 10-year-old Holly Parainen returned to her grandparents' rural summer cottage on South Pond in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, where she was vacationing with her family. Holly spent the morning swimming with her father and two brothers. After returning to the cottage, Holly and her 5-year-old brother, Zach, walked a few hundred yards to a fence at the back of a neighbor's yard to visit a litter of collie puppies. Zach returned without Holly a short time later. The family looked for Holly, but only one of her sneakers was found near the roadway. A massive search was launched, but sadly, 73 days later, on October 23, 1993, Holly's remains were found in a wooded area near Five Bridge Road in Brimfield, Massachusetts. Now, while there's no shortage of persons of interest, Holly's killer has never been found. In 2023, the district attorney's office announced a slight breakthrough after a tank top was located at the crime scene, and the public was asked to help identify where the shirt came from or who it belonged to. Anyone with any information on the disappearance and murder of Holly is asked to call the Massachusetts State Police Detective Unit at 413-505-5993 or text a tip to crimes, that's 274-637, and type solve Holly Paranen and your tip in the message. Now we have the kidnapping and murder of Molly Bish. On June 27, 2000, 16-year-old Molly Bish of Warren, Massachusetts, vanished just a day after she started working as a lifeguard at a pond in her hometown. The search to find her became the most extensive search for a missing person in Massachusetts history. Molly's story would later become the focus of a 2002 feature by Mel Allen, an editor for Yankee magazine. At the time of the article, Molly's parents still had hope that their daughter was alive. Sadly, Molly's remains were recovered just 5 miles from her home the following year. The party or parties responsible have never been found, making Molly's case one of New England's most frustrating unsolved mysteries. Massachusetts State Police encourage anyone with information on Molly's case to call their anonymous tip line at 508-453-7575. Next, the Smutty Nose Murders. On March 6, 1873, Karen Christensen and her sister-in-law Anathay were brutally murdered by an axe after midnight on the island of Smutty Nose, located off the Portsmouth, New Hampshire coast. Karen's sister, Maren Hontvedt, survived the attack and testified in the trial against the accused killer, Louis Wagner. Wagner, a drifter, was once a boarder at their Smutty Nose house. Maren's accounts of the attack horrified and fascinated the nation. Wagner was convicted and hanged at the Maine State Prison in Thomaston on June 25, 1875. Whether Wagner was actually responsible for the murders has been up for debate since his arrest and subsequent hanging. In March of 1980, Yankee magazine published a story about the gruesome crime, which sparked a letter from L. Morrow Burke, an associate professor at the University of Southern Maine. Burke concluded, quote, "The blood on Wagner's clothes was likely fish blood," end quote. The real culprit, in his analysis, was Maren Hontvedt. Professor Burke claimed that the wounds on the two victims were erratically placed, superficial, and inflicted by a, quote, "feminine arm rather than a man who could row the 12 miles to Smutty Nose in a dory," end quote. Burke went on to say not only did Maren survive the attack, but she was completely uninjured. Others speculate Maren's husband, John, is the killer. The Smutty Nose murders remain one of New England's most puzzling mysteries. The Berkshire UFO incident, also known as the Great Barrington UFO sighting, is one of American history's most famous UFO sightings. It occurred on the night of September 1st, 1969, in the small town of Sheffield, Massachusetts, located in the Berkshire Mountains. The incident began when a 36-year-old farmer named Tom Reed drove home from a family gathering with his mother, brother, and two friends. As they drove along a deserted road, they saw a bright light in the sky that seemed to follow them. The light grew larger and brighter until it was directly over their car. Suddenly, the car's engine stalled, and they heard a loud, pulsating sound. The next thing they knew, they were sitting in the car on the side of the road, about 300 feet from where they had been previously. They all had strange, unexplainable injuries and a sense of confusion and disorientation. Tom Reed later reported that he had a triangular burn mark on his neck, while his mother had a similar pattern on her wrist. The group returned home and reported the incident to the local police. The story quickly made headlines, and soon other witnesses came forward with their accounts of strange lights in the sky that night. The most compelling testimony came from a local radio station employee who claimed to have seen a large metallic craft hovering over the town. The incident gained national attention, and even the United States Air Force got involved. They sent investigators to the scene and conducted a thorough investigation, which included interviews with eyewitnesses and an analysis of the physical evidence. However, the report concluded that there was no evidence to support the existence of a UFO and that the incident was likely due to, quote, natural phenomena, end quote. Despite the Air Force's conclusion, many believe the Berkshire UFO incident was an extraterrestrial encounter. Numerous books, articles, and documentaries have been written and filmed in the years since the incident, and it has become a staple of UFO lore. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Berkshire UFO incident is the number of witnesses who came forward. While the original group consisted of only 5 people, more than 40 others reported seeing strange lights in the sky that night. Many of these witnesses were highly respected members of the community, including police officers, firefighters, and government officials. Another puzzling aspect of this incident is the physical evidence. The triangular burn marks on Tom Reed's neck and his mother's wrist are challenging to explain, and some have suggested that they are evidence of alien abduction. The fact that the car's engine stalled and the group sensed a sense of disorientation is also consistent with other UFO encounters. The Berkshire UFO incident is one of American history's most intriguing sightings. While the Air Force investigation concluded that there was no evidence to support the existence of a UFO, many people remain convinced that the incident was an actual extraterrestrial encounter. The number of witnesses and the physical evidence make the incident challenging to dismiss. And now, Frozen to Death, another of New England's most unusual unsolved mysteries, was chronicled by former Yankee editor-in-chief Judson Hale, who recounted the tale in his 1982 book, Inside New England. In 1939, Dr. Temple S. Fay of Philadelphia, who experimented with freezing human organs, gave a lecture in Providence, Rhode Island, in which he related a grotesque story he believed to be valid. Fay said the incident occurred just outside Montpelier, Vermont, around 1900. Dr. Fay read from an old diary kept by his late uncle, Williams. Williams visited a remote community outside Montpelier on January 7th and found all the community's elders lying on a cabin floor, drugged and unconscious. Williams describes how the elders were nude except for a single garment, carried outside into the bitter cold air and placed on logs. Williams continued, quote, "And the full moon, occasionally obscured by flying clouds, shone on their upturned, ghastly faces, and a horrible fascination kept me by the bodies as long as I could endure the severe cold. Soon the noses, ears, and fingers began to turn white. Then the limbs and faces assumed the tallow look. I could stand the cold no longer and went inside, where I found the friends in cheerful conversation. In about an hour, I went out and looked at the bodies. They were fast freezing," end quote. Fay continues, quote, "The next day, the bodies were covered with straw, placed in layers in a huge wooden enclosure to protect them from animals, and left there," end quote. The following May, all the frozen elders were brought inside and placed in tubs of warm water with hemlock until they revived, after which they went about their business refreshed by their long sleep of 4 months. What actually occurred in Montpelier that winter remains a mystery. That brings us to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist. On March 18, 1990, 2 men posing as police officers responding to a disturbance call entered the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, Massachusetts. Ultimately, this was only a scheme to swipe valuable works of art. The suspects tied up the guards and stole 13 pieces of art valued at more than $500 million, including works by Vermeer, Rembrandt, Degas, and Manet. It is the most significant theft of private property in terms of sheer value in history. It is speculated that the robbery was the work of a criminal organization, but no arrests have ever been made. The Gardner Museum continues to offer a monetary reward for information leading to the recovery of the art, and the spaces in the museum where the paintings once hung remain empty. Next, the strange disappearance of Brittany T. On January 10, 2023, 35-year-old Brittany T. vanished after leaving the Brookfield, Massachusetts home she shared with her boyfriend. Brittany's vehicle reportedly was not working, and she left on foot on one of the coldest nights of the year. Brittany's loved ones say it's unlike her to disappear without making contact. She was reported missing by her family a few days later, prompting an immediate search of the area. The case had a heavy social media presence from the beginning, and a Facebook group keeps the public notified of any updates. Local woods, backyards, parked cars, and parks, such as Lewis Field, near where Brittany was last seen, were searched. Among those interviewed were Brittany's boyfriend, who was described as cooperative. Authorities said there is no evidence a crime was committed, and no suspects have been named. Brittany T. is 5 foot 6 inches tall with brown hair and blue eyes, and was last seen wearing a black winter coat, hoodie, jeans, and work boots. As previously mentioned, temperatures were near record lows when Brittany went missing. Anyone with any information on Brittany's disappearance or whereabouts is asked to call the dedicated tip line at 508-453-7589. Next, the Betty and Barney Hill incident. Now, there have been numerous UFO sightings since the first reported one in 1947. One of the most notable is that of Betty and Barney Hill, an American couple who became famous in the 1960s for claiming to be abducted by extraterrestrial beings. The Hills were driving back to their Portsmouth, New Hampshire home on September 19, 1961, after vacationing in Canada. While driving through the White Mountains, they noticed a bright light in the sky that seemed to follow them. At first, they thought it was a shooting star, but it soon became apparent that it was something else entirely. As they continued to drive, the light grew closer and brighter, and eventually they could see that it was a large, disc-shaped object that appeared to be hovering above the treetops and was utterly silent. Barney stopped the car, and they got out to look closer. According to their later accounts, the Hills saw several humanoid creatures looking out at them from the craft's windows. These beings were described as about 5 feet tall, with gray skin and large wraparound eyes. They were wearing black uniforms and seemed to be communicating with each other in a language that the Hills could not understand. Terrified, the Hills fled to their car and left as fast as possible. They began to experience strange sensations, including a tingling sensation in their bodies and a buzzing sound in their ears. They claimed the car was vibrating and the steering wheel was becoming difficult to control. The Hills realized that they could not account for 2 hours when they returned home. They also noticed physical evidence that something unusual had happened to them. Betty's dress was torn, the lining was ripped out, and Barney's shoes were scraped and scuffed in a way that suggested he had been dragged. Over the next few days, the Hills began to experience strange dreams and nightmares. Betty dreamed of being taken aboard the craft and subjected to a medical examination, while Barney dreamed of being interrogated by these beings. These dreams and nightmares continued for several weeks, and the Hills became increasingly convinced that aliens had abducted them. Eventually, they sought the help of a local psychiatrist named Dr. Benjamin Simon. Under hypnosis, Betty and Barney recounted their experiences in great detail, including their encounters with the beings and the medical procedures performed on them. According to Betty, the beings had shown her a map depicting a series of interconnected lines and dots representing various stars and star systems. She would later draw the star map for Dr. Simon. The Hills' story became the subject of much debate and controversy in the following years. Skeptics argued that the Hills' experiences could be explained by sleep paralysis or other psychological phenomena, while believers saw their story as proof of alien visitation. Despite the controversy, the Hills' story has remained one of history's most well-known and influential cases of UFO abduction. It has inspired countless books, movies, and TV shows, and continues to fascinate and intrigue people worldwide. And finally, we have the disappearance of Kathy Moulton. On September 24th, 1971, 16-year-old Kathy Marie Moulton disappeared after school in the downtown area of Portland, Maine, after being dropped off by her father to go shopping. Kathy was supposed to take her bus home for dinner and then attend a dance at the YWCA with friends later that night, but she never returned. Her father, Roy, drove around the city looking for her, while her mother, Claire, called neighbors and friends to see if anyone had seen Kathy. The search for Kathy was marked by frustration. Investigators seemingly failed to investigate why she'd gone missing, and witnesses were unwilling to explain what happened. Retired Portland detective Kevin Cady, who worked on the case in the 1990s, said, quote, "This wasn't in the press. This wasn't a big talked about thing like it might be today with social media. It certainly would have gotten a lot more fanfare now," end quote. The attitudes of the era were that she was probably just rebelling or protesting or ran off with her boyfriend if he got drafted. It was not taken with the seriousness that it was to our family, said Kim Higgins, Kathy's younger sister. In the years since Kathy's disappearance, detectives painstakingly pieced together her movements on that fateful day. They theorized she was taken from Portland against her will by an older boyfriend and his acquaintance. She was prevented from leaving while working on a potato farm in Aroostook County, then died on a Maliseet-Tobique First Nations reservation in New Brunswick. The Moultons never stopped talking about Kathy and pushing the police to do more. Roy Moulton died at age 92 in 2017 without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. Kathy's body has never been recovered, and no official suspects have been named in the case. This remains one of the oldest active missing person cases in Maine and the United States. Kathy was last seen wearing a navy short-sleeved wool dress, a navy double-breasted box coat with brass buttons, and carried only her brown leather bag. She'd had 2 eye teeth removed prior to getting braces. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Kathy Moulton, please contact the Portland Police Department at 207-874-8479. Well, friends, there you have it. What do you think of these strange unsolved mysteries from New England? I look forward to your comments, but please keep it friendly and respectful. Until we meet again, be good to yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll see you a little further on down the trail. And tell your animals, Steve says hi.
Awesome stuff, Steve Stockton. Way to end it, right? Be good to each other, man. That's really the message at the end of the day. And yeah, you know, it's when you think about it, it is amazing to know the number of individuals that get reported missing every year in the United States alone. It was crazy. The number, I think it was somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000 people. That is crazy. A lot of the cases get solved. You know, a lot of people aren't missing forever. Some people come back. Some people are found, unfortunately, not in the best circumstances. But when you think about that, 600,000 to 800,000 people reported missing just in the United States. Just imagine if you just did the math on all these different areas of the world where people are going missing and what that total number is. If it's 600,000 to 800,000 here in the United States, we have 350 million people. There are a lot of countries with a lot more people than that. And you would have to assume that the missing number for them is at least that or maybe even higher. And it gets into this astronomical number that is insane. And then you have to ask yourself at that point, why are they missing? Is it just, foul play? Is it someone got lost and, unfortunately something happens? Yeah. And then obviously, as we talk in this subject about the whole UFO experience and the fact that we at least know that these things are here, they're in these vehicles or these ships, they're getting out on occasion, with all the different sightings that we know about. And, some people are reporting that they're being taken or contacted, depending on where, if you're in the United States or not, as Suzy pointed out, right? So it's just a scary thing. And getting into Suzy, great stuff here tonight. I thought it was awesome. And, Drew Banky is in here tonight for the After Hours wrap up. So I'm doing my quick little 1 minute wrap up. And I think one thing, so maybe I should change my banner. One thing I definitely want to point out here on that is when we have these conversations, as I say all the time, I love skeptics coming into the chat as well, because I think both sides are valuable to getting to the answers and where we need to go. So opposing opinions or questions are welcome. And, when you look at, I haven't had, as far as I know, extraterrestrial contact, like actual contact. I've seen these craft. I recorded them, broad daylight, no mistaking that these weren't ours, fully disappeared into thin air, clear blue sky. I have the video on my channel. So we know that they're here. And when it gets into the why are they here and the thing, I can't validate, based on my experience, those things. But I always like to point out to skeptics, let's just take it back to bare basics. I always say this, we're sitting on a rock, a ball. We're sitting on a rock currently. It's traveling at thousands of miles per hour, rotating at thousands of miles per hour, floating through space in an infinite space that doesn't end. If you could wrap your mind around that, around a ball of fire, right? It's real. That's actually happening. So if that can happen, if that's real, then a lot of these other things definitely fall under that. And that's how we close out every show. The phenomenon is real, which means anything, everything beneath that is possible. So with that being said, we're going into our final break here of the night. Spaced Out Radio, we're going to do something a little fun. on the other half of this break, and it includes you. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, we are clear. So here's what I want to do. We're on a 5-minute break here. It says we're not doing a full after hours wrap up. I just gave my 1-minute wrap up there. What I want to do is I want a little bit of viewer participation. We're going to do that, and then I'm going to go into the UFO story, weird news of the week. So we're going to run this viewer engaged segment for about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. And what I would like for you to do, because I'm always history is a good indicator of things that we are currently dealing with sort of person, right? We always talk about that. So what I would like is to have you put in the chat and put it in caps so I can tag these, because we're gonna go over as many of these as we can. Some of the more obscure UFO cases that aren't really talked about a lot, and we're gonna look those up. We're gonna kind of briefly go over what happened in those cases, and this will be educational for people who may not have been aware of these sightings. Some of the more obscure ones, we know of all the main ones, but if you have one in your back pocket that you don't really hear talked about a lot, put it in the chat and put it in caps, and we're going to go ahead and bring that up. We're going to look up the information on that, and it's going to be educational for everyone else that gets to hear about it. So I think that would be awesome. It's a little audience engagement thing that I want to do here tonight. I think it'd be pretty cool and informative. So I'll be checking the chat. If you have anything that you want to go ahead and put there, then we'll go ahead and take a look at those. As many as we can within about a 10 to 12 minute time frame. Oh, was not aware of this. Well, let me bring that up. So tonight, November 30th, apparently is the 11th anniversary of the launch of Spaced Out Radio. Was not aware of that, but that's actually pretty awesome that happens to fall on tonight. So congratulations to Spaced Out Radio for being on air for 11 years, and hopefully many more years to come. And that's good stuff. So awesome that you put that out there, Paramore. And pretty good stuff. So yeah, definitely put some UFO encounters, some of the more obscure ones, and we can go ahead and look those up, or even some of your favorites. Put your favorites as well, and we'll go ahead and talk about those on the other side of the break. Happy anniversary, Spaced Out Radio from Matt Gutka. Awesome stuff. Wish I had some horns and bells that I could play for you here. Awesome stuff. Appreciate you, Woo Riders DG. Awesome guy. Can't do it by myself, but it's awesome for you to say so. Let's see. Okay, let me try to bring these up here. We got a couple. Let me try to bring those up before we come back here. We got about a minute and a half. All right, about 45 seconds. All right, we got about 10 seconds here. I got a couple of these up that we can run with. And here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show. We're on the back half of hour 3. We've had a fantastic show here tonight, and we're going to do something a little different. Since Drew Banky is not in tonight, feeling under the weather, as we talked about last night, we're going to have audience participation tonight. We're going to do that, but guess what? Our archive is free, so if you missed the Suzy Hansen interview, you're in luck. You can hop in the archive anytime, Space Out Radio on YouTube. And we're going to go ahead and look into some more of the obscure UFO cases as recommended by you, the viewer. So we have a few of these out here that I've tagged, and we are going to take a look at the first case here. We're just going to kind of talk about these. Someone is recommended, and that is JBW8471 has brought up one of the more obscure UFO cases, Moss Landing UFO, 1997. It was on Coast to Coast back in 2015. And I found a Reddit on that. So we're going to go ahead and read from the Reddit and kind of, bring you guys up to speed. For those who may not have ever heard of this case, and myself included, right? We're going to learn something here today. So according to this Reddit, this is the Reddit for this particular case, says this 1997 Moss Landing power plant UFO event on, it says California's coast. Okay, so I don't know. This is a Reddit, so we're going to see what it says here. It says in mid-August 1997, Joy Williams, her husband Tom Williams, and their friend Emily had dinner at their home overlooking Monterey Bay in Aptos, California. From her balcony, Joy noticed a bright yellow-green glow in the water, maybe a quarter mile offshore, well inside the northern edge of the bay. For the next few minutes, the glow slowly brightened until a gigantic egg-shaped object rose from the water. Quote, "It was huge," Joy said. "It was really big, and as it was coming out, I could see all the kelp slipping off of it. It rose out slowly." Joy called for Tom and Emily, and all three watched the object in shock through a telescope they had on deck. The object moved slowly north, skirting the shore. Joy later told MUFON investigators, quote, "When we looked at it through the spyglass, we could see portholes all around the center of it. There were about a dozen visible portholes, all elliptically shaped, alternating green and amber in color. The object was still moving slowly north and was gold amber color. After an estimated 10 minutes, the object stopped right next to the smokestacks of the nearby coal-fired plant at Moss Landing. The object's light illuminated the smokestacks themselves, which were 500 feet in height. The object hovered immediately next to the tops. Using the smokestacks, using the smokestacks as a reference, the trio estimated the object to be at least 50 feet across. Tom seemed to take the experience in stride. Joyce felt slightly nervous and wondered if the occupants of the object realized that they were being observed. Emily was the most upset of the three. "It was a little scary, to be honest," Joyce says. "It disturbed me. It's a hard emotion to express. It made me feel like I wasn't in control, a bit intimidated, because I almost felt like it knew I was watching it." What happened next left them all stunned. A gigantic metallic arm emerged from the side of the craft, furthest from the smokestacks. The arm grew out of the object, extended upward and over the top of the craft, and then continued downward on the other side. The end of the arm contained a gigantic pair of pincers, which began to probe the inside of the open smokestacks. "I don't know what it was doing," Joyce said, "but it had these long pincers on it, and it looked like it was collecting something. It was just hovering right next to the power plant, and it did that for about 20 minutes. We couldn't stop looking at it because it was so bizarre. We were so stunned. Like, what is this thing? They remained in a trance-like state while the object hovered, feeling no urgency to get a camera. They commented about how the area was fairly well populated. Other people would surely be seeing this. The craft was huge and very bright. We couldn't be the only witnesses. Fully extended, the arm was more than twice the length of the craft. The pincers alone were estimated to be at least 20 feet long. My first memory of seeing this thing hovering in the sky was between us and the power plant, Tom says. I didn't see it come out of the water. It had an arm on it and several lights. There was a telescope, and once we had a good look at it, we saw this definite arm and a couple of different colored lights. The thing itself was kind of golden yellow color and hovered in the sky for quite some time. After they watched the object for close to 20 minutes, Tom eventually came to his senses and called the police. The officer listened to both Joy and Tom as they explained what they were seeing. When he realized what they were describing an apparent UFO, the officer's attitude immediately changed. Like a switch being turned off, the officer dismissed their testimonies completely. Quote, "It's probably just a fishing boat," he told them. "In the middle of the sky?" Tom asked, incredulous. "Fishing boats don't fly," Joy pointed out. "This definitely came up out of the water." They told the officer that the object was still there. The officer refused to listen. Quote, "It didn't seem to make any difference to them," Joy says. They hung up the phone and resumed their UFO vigil. After approximately 5 minutes, all three watched the object instantly wink out. In a split second, it was gone. Joy eventually contacted UFO researcher Linda Moulton Howe and shared the sighting with her. 20 years later, in 2018, she reported the case to MUFON. Wow. Did not know about that case. Totally interesting. So we appreciate that, JBW 8471. The other case I was able to find is also from JBW 8471. And this case happens to be Alabama. Let's see here. Mobile, Alabama UFO 1983, JBW says. And according to that, this is also Reddit. Alabama, 1983, huge UFO scene, 20 to 30 occupants inside, walking about as if they were changing shift. On the bottom deck, people were peering out. Interesting. Let me see what it says here. 1:10 a.m., a 28-year-old woman observed a very large metallic cylindrical flying object with structural detail up close while driving on a highway near Mobile, I believe, right? Yeah. She could see 20 to 30 occupants inside through the windows. They appear to pay no attention to her, although she feels a sense of euphoria during the event. She earlier had dreams of a UFO abduction encounter, including a physical exam. All right. Okay. That was pretty short, but if you could see the image, maybe I can show it here, at least for people watching, you'll be able to see what this is. This is apparently what this looked like. Not like Steve Stockton. It looked like this. Oh. All right. Bunch of windows. Apparently, she was able to see in this thing and saw 20 to 30 occupants walking around. I'm going to look for this other one here. There was another one recommended by viewer Amy WC. And I want to see if we can find this one here. Salagi in North Carolina. Never heard of that. And let's see if I can locate that. All right, let's see. All right, so according to this here, what I was able to find, it says the term Salagi UFO in North Carolina likely refers to a specific incident involving a UFO sighting reported in the region. And let's see. It may be okay. It says that the term itself is not known, and okay, but it does list prominent UFO reports in North Carolina. So I'll go ahead and go over those. It shows included sightings like a rotating disc over Shelby, a swarm of lights in Pamlico Sound, and other numerous reports of strange lights, which have been the subject of widespread discussion and investigation. Notable sightings in North Carolina would have been the Shelby disc. In October 2019, a driver filmed a disc-like object over Shelby that appeared to be stationary and rotating before disappearing. The Pamlico Sound lights. Also in October of 2019, a video captured a group of 14 lights hovering over Pamlico Sound, which sparked debate about whether they were military flares or something else. We have the Brown Mountain Lights, also in North Carolina. These are a series of ghost lights reported for many years near Brown Mountain. And let me see if there's another one here. There's the UFOs in North Carolina. And let me see what's... Okay, it's just a reporting site. Okay, well, yeah, well, that's it. That's it. We're going to go ahead and get ready to jump into this weird news. I think that was awesome to be able to see some of the more obscure UFO stories out there, especially the Moss Landing one. That was actually pretty detailed and pretty cool. Said it was on coast to coast. I'm going to look more into these sightings offline, and then maybe we'll do something like this again. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up the show, go over a couple stories here with the UFO and weird news of the week. This is more weird news of the week, more than UFO weird news of the week. So we're going to go ahead, jump into that right about now. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I please have your attention. I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, UFO and weird news of the week. I have a couple stories here. One of these has to do with, I don't know if you're familiar with D.B. Cooper. It has been a mystery of who this person actually was. A lot of, dead ends. A lot of people claim to who have been related to this individual. I've seen at least 2 or 3 different stories where someone has figured out who D.B. Cooper was. Now, man, this is the latest story here. Man says it's extremely possible his dad was D.B. Cooper after new evidence uncovered. The case of D.B. Cooper has baffled people for generations. A man believes it is extremely possible that his father may be notorious skyjacker D.B. Cooper, following a compelling new theory. Who is D.B. Cooper? It's a mystery which has baffled everyone from the FBI to internet sleuths and conspiracy theorists over the decades. On November 24th, I guess it's anniversary, right? 6 days ago. On November 24th, 1971, a man by the name of Dan Cooper boarded a flight from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. After purchasing a ticket in cash from the airport. Once the flight was airborne, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant informing her that he had a bomb and gave her the following list of demands: $200,000 cash, roughly close to $1 million in today's money, and 4 parachutes. He allowed the plane to land in Seattle and the other passengers to depart in exchange for the ransom before ordering the pilot to fly to Mexico. Around 30 minutes after the plane took off, Cooper opened an aircraft door and parachuted out, never to be seen again. 54 years on from the incident, and the case remains the only unsolved plane hijacking in U.S. history, with the hunt for Cooper officially ceasing in 2016. However, this has not stopped amateur detectives and true crime fans from sharing their theories about the case, including a claim from a man named Keith Bagsby, who believes his father, Joe Lackett, could have been D.B. Cooper. Could Joe Lackett be the mysterious D.B. Cooper? The theory that Joe Lackett could be the mysterious D.B. Cooper was put forward by the inventor and a licensed pilot, Bill Rollins, who wrote in his 2017 book that the secret to unmasking the identity of Cooper lies in his, quote, grudge. When asked by the flight attendant why he'd chosen to hijack a Northwest Orient Airlines flight, he replied, quote, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airlines. It's just because I have a grudge." Rollins' theory points to the fact that Lackett's daughter, Susan, had been unalive just 2 weeks before by her estranged husband during a botched hijacking. He believes the incident led to Lackett wanting revenge against the FBI, which he believed was responsible for her death. He also believes that Lackett matches the physical descriptions of Cooper and pointed to his military training, allowing him to jump from the aircraft. After writing his book, Rollins later contacted Lackett's son, Keith Bagsby, who acknowledged the theory is, quote, extremely possible. "I can understand Bill's theory, knowing what happened to my sister, but I was skeptical at first," he said in a recent interview with Mail Online. Quote, "I believe it's extremely possible. On one hand, it could have been Joe with all the circumstances at hand, but if so, he hid it very well from any of us." He continued, "The tragedy with Susan greatly affected Joe. He would talk about it from time to time. It genuinely saddened him, but we never discussed D.B. Cooper." The alleged motivation isn't Rollins' only argument that Joe Lackett is D.B. Cooper, pointing to a clip-on tie which he left behind on the plane. After being analyzed by volunteer scientists known as citizen sleuths, particles of titanium, stainless steel, and palladium were found on the tie, materials which suggest Cooper had worked in a metal processing plant. The fact that Lackett worked at Nashville Electronics, a factory which used several of these particles, is further evidence for Rollins that he was D.B. Cooper. However, not everyone believes Rollins' theory, with numerous alternative claims being put forward over the years. Retired agent Larry Carr, who was in charge of the case between 2006 and 2010, believes Cooper had limited military training and likely didn't survive the jump. Quote, "Plenty of folks have come up with a suspect and then cherry-picked their way backwards to a grudge. But that's a sure way back to back yourself into a hole," he added to Mail Online. Meanwhile, Eric Eulis, who created CooperCon, has dismissed other claims to be descendants of D.B. Cooper, previously debunking statements made by siblings Shante and Rick McCoy III about their father in an interview with a news outlet. So, the story of D.B. Cooper goes on, lives on, probably will never be solved. I know the FBI originally, I think right after this happened, found like money. They found some of the money kind of spread out in this wilderness area. The theory was he didn't make it. Some theories was the money got there because he dropped some of it. And that, I guess that'll be one that we just never know the answer to. And let's see if we can get another quick one out of here. Let's see. We have a story about lead flat earth conspiracy theorist who shares evidence one of the biggest events in human history was staged. Oh, here we go again. We're talking about the moon. A leading flat earther has argued that one of the biggest scientific achievements in human history was staged. Flat Earth is a conspiracy theory that just refuses to die, regardless of how many astronauts blast off into space and photograph our home planet in all of their round, glorious beauty. Forget science, forget photographic evidence. In the mind of a hardcore flat earther, we live on a floating frisbee where the ocean just cascades over the side like an interstellar waterfall. One of the most prominent flat earthers in U.S. is U.S. content creator Mark Sargent, a man who is widely credited as popularizing the modern flat earth movement. Sargent regularly shares his theories on YouTube, believes planets are just lights on the ceiling, and he even appeared on Netflix 2018 documentary Behind the Curve. Sargent's beliefs have since expanded beyond flat earth to include ideas that Bigfoot walks among us and that astronauts are Freemasons. In Sargent's view of space, the absence of conventional planets means the 1969 moon landing wasn't possible, an argument which he outlines on Harry Robinson and Carl Regal's Mad Vet series, a podcast which aims to interview the most exclusive guests and uncover the maddest stories. So what does Sargent have to say about the moon landings? Quote, never let the truth get in the way of a good story, Sargent said of the Apollo 11 mission. Quote, you see what resonates with the public, you change a few details, and then the story becomes better. Sargent then went on to claim that soft spacesuits depicted in TV and film aren't scientifically possible, would suggest to him that the moon landings were fake. Quote, tell me how a spacesuit works in a vacuum. Tell me how it works, he says. Going on to add that America capitalized on their post-World War II advantage to become the greatest showman in the world, which isn't entirely wrong. Sargent, the Americans, if there is a rumor or a lie, will make us look better. We won't hesitate, he said. We absolutely will do it. You don't realize what happened after World War II. The rest of the world was smoldering, he said. Everybody was picking up ashes except America. America was like, let's start inventing stuff. And then somebody came up with the idea like, you know what? Let's say we went to the moon. Thankfully, due to the advancements of space technology, it won't be too long until the average person can head up into space and settle the debate once and for all. I don't know how you feel about flat Earth. I don't see any evidence of flat Earth. I'm open to a lot of things. I'm open to a lot of possibilities, but I think it's pretty clear we're on a rock that's round. And just like all the other round rocks that we see out there in the sky. So with that being said, that's how I want to end the show. We want to thank our guest, Suzy Hansen, for coming in all the way from New Zealand, being awesome. We also want to thank Steve Stockton, Tells Untold, Mr. Person Mysteries. And we also want to thank the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot. He's the man that rocks us out each and every weekend as he reminds us, never say never again, because yes, the phenomenon is real and anything and everything is possible. Show your love tonight by hitting that like button. Let us know how you like the show. Also, we want to thank our viewers online and listeners on terrestrial radio, when and wherever in the world you may be listening from. Thank you for tuning your frequency, the Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What's that, you ask? We own the night. Remember, the show is copyright Spaced Out Radio Media Ventures Limited. It's a pleasure once again, actually, to serve you as your host. I am Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. To all you space travelers out there, it's not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, you can best believe as we go off air for the night, we'll be back doing the same thing, same time, same place. So we would implore and appreciate seeing you next time. Have a great rest of your night. Have a great week. Happy anniversary, Spaced Out Radio. Have a great rest of your night. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. I'm out. All right, everybody. We are crystal clear. Appreciate you guys taking part in the show here tonight. I think it's awesome, time to time to be able to have audience interaction. You guys are always come with great questions, and to be able to have you be a part of the show was awesome. So I think we learned we talked about a couple of UFO experience or sightings tonight that maybe not a lot of people were aware of, and I think that adds value to the show. You walk away with something that you didn't know before, and that's always the goal here on the After Hours Radio Show. We want to have conversations that move the needle, and once again, we do appreciate you guys taking a part in that here tonight. I am going to go ahead and get up out of here, and you know how we shut the show down each and every night. We do it like this. We want retribution. We're going to get it at some point. Much love, guys. Take care.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.